Chapter 781. When Sima Jun heard her agree so readily, a smile appeared in her eyes. She knew that the person in front of her was a man of his word. He wasn't playing Tai Chi with her. Sima Jun, founder of Lan Manor. Although Chu Qingyan was already mentally prepared, when she heard the truth, she couldn't help but tremble. Lan Manor? It actually came from a young woman like you. It's really unbelievable. Everything that had happened in Lan Manor was still vivid in Chu Qingyan's memory. Sima Jun shook her head and smiled. At that time, I just wanted to play around, but I didn't want to play too big. In the end, I just did it. Anyway, it's already been established. The things that I want to do can only develop in the right direction, so you know. If such shameless boasting came from someone else's mouth, Chu Qingyan might have snorted disdainfully. But the person in front of her could only make her sigh in admiration. Sima Jun looked like she was only 18 or 19 years old. Then when she founded Lan Manor, she was only a little over 10 years old. It was too scary. The people of this era couldn't be described as normal. I thought that in the eyes of the world, Lan Manor was just a small organization. Perhaps they didn't know. I wanted to explain it to you, but looking at you, you should have heard of it. That saves me the trouble of talking. Sima Jun supported her face with one hand and said with a smile. Chu Qingyan could not help but roll her eyes. Lan Zhuang's name alone was enough to scare the White Dao, alright? Ordinary people didn't know about it, so it was normal that they didn't know. But to the officialdom and Jianghu, this was equivalent to the leader of the gray area. It seemed to be involved in everything, but also seemed to be involved in nothing. Moreover, it had a way of accumulating wealth. It was elusive, and many political bosses who coveted it couldn't do anything about it. This was also the reason why Chu Qingyan admired her. When she heard Sima Jun's words, she really wanted to say, I don't mind you talking about Lan Manor. I seem to know about it. It's your turn. Sima Jun raised his chin. You look like a commoner, but you have a secret guard that many high-ranking officials and wealthy businessmen can only dream of. Tell me, which noble family are you from? Chu Qingyan felt that she had overestimated her. She rubbed her nose and smiled. Our Chu family is just a small, run-down family. My father has no official position, no wealth, and no power. My mother is also not the daughter of a high-ranking official. Oh, if you really want to talk about it, my father used to be a general in the Sichuan kingdom, but that was 15 years ago. Ah. Sima Jun was obviously stunned by her words. Then which sect are you from? I don't belong to any sect. That's not right. Where did he learn from? Are you a hermit expert? Neither. Sima Jun was stunned. Could it be that her information was wrong? Was she just a lucky girl? Then you wouldn't have gotten your martial arts skills for no reason, would you? Did your secret guards also fall from the sky? She still couldn't believe it. Chu Qingyan was amused. Then, she thought of something and her expression became a little gloomy. That's because I hooked up with a powerful and wealthy fiancé. Sima Jun looked like she suddenly realized something. Then, she said a little embarrassedly, it's fine, it's fine. It doesn't matter even if his family background is ordinary. Didn't I say that it's better to marry well than to be born well? You have so many secret guards by your side. It's obvious that your fiancé treats you well. This is enough to kill many people. Chu Qingyan smiled a little reluctantly. If she had heard these words a few days ago, she might have been very happy. But now, she felt very uncomfortable in her heart. Once you fell in love with someone, no matter how magnanimous a woman was, she would become greedy. She would want the other party to only have her in his eyes and in his heart. But in the modern era where one husband and one wife were single, even men couldn't do it. How could a man in ancient times who had 3 wives and 4 concubines be able to treat one person wholeheartedly? Sima Jun was able to pull Lan Manor from a small organization to the fearsome underground tyrant at a young age. It was all because of her keen eyesight, her ability to read people's minds, and her ability to observe people's expressions. At this time, when she saw Chu Qingyan's absent-minded look, she knew that she had said something wrong. She thought for a moment, then said, "Then your fiancé is?" "Sichuan Kingdom's King of England, Xiao Su." Chu Qingyan also restrained her emotions at this time and said calmly. Sima Jun's eyes lit up. "So you're Chu Qingyan, the King of England's little princess consort?" Chu Qingyan was very surprised that she could directly call out her name. But then she thought about it. Lon Manor's intelligence network was spread all over the country. What's more, Big Ice Cube's status was not low. It was normal for this matter to be known. At this time, Sima Jun's emotions were surging. She didn't expect to casually pick up such a powerful thigh on the road. What was Xiao Su's background? Everyone knew about him. Even Sima Jun, who didn't participate in the imperial court, had heard of him. Especially the fierce cavalry under his command. That was a special force. If she could cooperate with Chu Qingyan, then there was hope for her to return to Lon Manor. "Okay, I'm going to do this business." Chu Qingyan wanted to roll her eyes at Sima Jun's sudden words. How could this kind of thing be decided so unilaterally? "Master Sima, aren't you a little too hasty? She just said her family's name." But Chu Qingyan didn't know that for Sima Jun, this family's name was enough. "Ahem, little Qingyan, what I said just now was a little too hasty." "Then let me be more serious." Sima Jun stretched out her right hand and smiled seriously. "I, Sima Jun, as the master of the manor, propose to cooperate with you. If you can help me return to Lon Manor and severely punish the traitor, then if you need Lon Manor in the future, Sima Jun will not refuse." After saying that, Sima Jun smiled from the tip of her eyebrows. She was both charming and immortal. "Then, do you dare to accept?" These words inexplicably ignited Chu Qingyan's fire. She liked this kind of equal cooperation, and not the ancient people who looked down on women. No matter what a woman did, there would always be gossip behind her back. This was also why she chose Hua Xiaoli as her partner. It was only because she admired such a woman who was not afraid of the world. She didn't expect to meet such a Sima Jun today. She was the type she yearned for. The answer was no surprise. Chu Qingyan also stretched out her right hand. When the two shook hands, both of them smiled. Chu Qingyan realized that this action seemed to be something that only existed in the modern era. It represented acquaintance, cooperation, and farewell. But soon, this thought flashed through her mind and disappeared. Sima Jun was not a wishy-washy person. When the two of them confirmed their cooperation, Sima Jun concisely explained the current situation to Chu Qingyan. Thus, the two of them began to discuss countermeasures. Chu Qingyan didn't know, because this decision would soon bring her a great surprise. At the same time, the Liang family's carriage arrived in Jiangnan. Chapter 782. Where is Ian right now? At this time, he was still eating breakfast alone. Xiao Su looked at the empty spot beside him and felt that the delicious food he normally ate had no appetite at all. Turan had gone out to handle some matters and Hualing was waiting on the side. He immediately replied when he heard, Little Princess Consort went to Miss Sima's courtyard. Ever since they had Little Princess Consort, Shaolai cavalry had another skill other than guarding the house. It was to keep track of Little Princess Consort's movements at all times. This was not a requirement of Master, but Master would ask about it every day, so Shaolai cavalry silently added this to their daily routine. Xiao Su's appetite became even worse after hearing this. It wasn't that he didn't know that Sima Jun had put on a show of marrying him in the room yesterday. Last night, he wanted to punish the little fellow a bit, but before he could speak, the little fellow had mysteriously run away. Now, he didn't want to see him. He was a bit angry. Shouldn't he be the one angry? Hualing knew that Master was not in a good mood today, but seeing him put down the bowl after a few bites, he couldn't help worrying, Master, you've eaten too little for the past 2 meals. I'm full from anger. Hualing wanted to say something, but was choked back by these words. It was rare to see Master reveal his emotions like this, so he didn't know what to say for a while. Hualing felt that ever since Master had a little princess consort by his side 5 years ago, he had walked down from the altar and was tainted with the scent of the mortal world. But even if he was angry with little princess consort, he shouldn't go on a hunger strike. Wasn't this a little too much? It didn't match the mighty Master in his impression at all. But Hualing only dared to curse in his heart. Xiaosu didn't even look at the food as he had people take it away. He turned and went to the study. He needed to calm down right now. When Chu Qingyan and Sima Jun finished talking, a feeling of regret that they hadn't met earlier lingered in his heart. This feeling didn't just come from the tacit understanding they had, it also came from the fact that they could think of the same plan. I have 20 to 30 people with me. Basically, I can send them out to cover your return. Chu Qingyan did not even blink as she handed over all the people she had on hand. If you give me all the people around you, who will protect you? Don't tell me you don't intend to ask your fiancé for help. Although Sima Jun was very happy with Chu Qingyan's loyalty, he was somewhat puzzled. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows. Didn't you just want someone to protect you from those minions? It's troublesome to have too many people. It's best to travel on light horses, so I have enough people. Besides, we women can't lose our status. We can't always rely on men for everything, right? Sima Jun nodded approvingly. I like the sound of that. Chu Qingyan's eyes curved into crescents. Then when are you leaving? Let's tentatively set it for 3 days later. However, I hope that you can lend me a few people in the next few days. I want to contact my people first. No problem. After resolving the major matter in his heart, Sima Jun's temperament had become much more relaxed. He did not even hold back when speaking and became much more intimate with Chu Qingyan. Everything that happened here was not hidden from Xiaosu. He snorted heavily. It seemed that he had picked up another rotten peach blossom. One after another came, but he could not chase them away. The previous one was like that, and this one was also like that. However, Xiaosu did not know that his 2 rotten peach blossoms were about to enter his door. May I ask how to get to the Chu residence? 3 very unobtrusive carriages appeared on the streets of Jiangnan. The coachman on the carriage was asking the passers-by. Which Chu family are you asking about? The passers-by asked. Chu Yan. He's a businessman. The coachman immediately replied. Oh, that handsome young man you're talking about. I know. Follow this road to the end and then turn right to the 3rd house. There are guards at the door and it's different from other houses. In any case, you'll know when you get there. The passers-by was in a hurry to get there. After saying that, he waved his hand and left. The coachman returned to the carriage and explained the location to the people in the carriage. Then, he drove the carriage in the direction the passers-by had pointed out. In the spacious carriage sat 2 beautiful girls. They were about the same age and their beautiful faces were somewhat similar. It was not difficult to tell that they were a pair of beautiful sisters. It's so strange. Why did eldest cousin use the Chu residence and not the Shao residence? The passers-by's voice was not soft. Everyone in the carriage heard him. The impatient Liang Danbing could not help but ask her sister sitting beside her. The butterfly hairpins tassels on her head swayed because of her movements, as if they were about to fly up. It made her seem playful and lively. Only the imperial family can use the surname Shao in this world. Eldest cousin came to Jiangnan in private. It's not good to make a big fuss about it. Otherwise, it will attract attention. Liang Danjing was like her name. She was as quiet as water and had an otherworldly temperament. At a glance, one could tell that she came from a noble family. Her appearance was gentle and generous. However, when she spoke, her eyes were cold. In fact, it was not important to use the surname of the residence. However, that person was eldest cousin. The person who was rumored to not be blasphemed by anyone actually used Chu Qingyan's surname. This represented the position this person held in eldest cousin's heart. However, using the surname Chu is also surprising. Liang Danbing looked simple, but how could someone who lived in the inner courtyard of a large residence and in the circle of rich and famous people be like a blank piece of paper? Younger sister, what do you want to say? Liang Danjing looked at her with a trace of doubt in her eyes. Liang Danbing curled her lips slightly and her expression was somewhat cold. Chu Qingyan is only born in a poor family. What right does she have to sit in the position of the King of England's consort? Eldest cousin can treat her differently only because no other woman has appeared by his side. Look at her arrogance. When the time comes, I will definitely trample her into the mud. This did not seem like something a noble family's daughter should say. Liang Danjing disagreed and said, "Younger sister, be careful with your words." She knew that her younger sister had been influenced by the nannies sent by auntie these days. They were afraid of eldest cousin, who they had only met a few times. When they heard about auntie and father's decision, they resisted at first. However, the nannies said that if they could capture eldest cousin's heart or occupy a position by his side, then in the future, whether it was themselves or the Liang family, it would bring unparalleled glory. The Liang family was the nation's mother's maiden family and belonged to the faction of the first prince. If the emperor died 100 years later, then the throne, in the end, the two young ladies took the initiative to accept. Who didn't want to be the most noble woman in the world? Older sister, there are no outsiders here. You don't have to worry about being overheard. Moreover, auntie is very attentive to us. Not only did she send several nannies, she also sent guards from the palace to escort us. Do you really think that these people are only there to protect us? Liang Danbing gave her a displeased look and blinked innocently as she asked. After Liang Danjing heard this, she smiled with understanding. How could she not know that these people were sent by auntie to deal with Chu Qingyan? After not seeing each other for 5 years, she did not know how Chu Qingyan had changed. She was somewhat looking forward to it. Chapter 783. When the Liang family's beautiful sisters arrived, Xiao Su was reviewing documents in the study. Unfortunately, because of his irritation, he couldn't read a single word. Master, the Liang family's people are here. Huo Ling ran in a flurry. Xiao Su didn't even raise his head. Isn't it just a few people? Why are you in such a rush? Huo Ling rubbed his head. Wasn't he just worried about Master? Then Master, they're already in the guest hall. Do you want to see them? Even though he didn't like the Liang family, especially this kind of person who dared to ruin the relationship between Master and the little princess, he didn't like them from the bottom of his heart. However, out of courtesy, he felt that Master should go through the motions. Huo Ling, whose fu is this? Xiao Su didn't reply and asked a question instead. Huo Ling didn't understand, the Chu Fu, in name, it's the little princess. When he said this, Huo Ling didn't continue because he had an epiphany. So you have to ask the owner of this fu and not this Wang. Xiao Su glanced at him indifferently. Huo Ling shivered and immediately bowed. This subordinate will go find the little princess right now. The child is worth teaching. It was rare for Xiao Su to praise him. Huo Ling giggled as he turned to go find the person. Chu Qingyan had just come out of the side yard when she met Huo Ling, who was looking for her. Little princess, the Liang family's people are here. Liang family? These two words dragged Chu Qingyan from her good mood into the cold winter snow. She didn't forget that the Liang family's people were sent by Empress Liang to cultivate their relationship with the big ice cube. Even though her heart was in turmoil, she still had to maintain a good demeanor in front of her subordinates. Oh, they're here. Chu Qingyan wanted to leave after answering. Huo Ling stopped her. Little princess, aren't you going to take a look? Why should I go? If I disturb His Highness and the beauty's intimate moment, wouldn't I be a sinner? Chu Qingyan said indifferently. Huo Ling knew she was jealous and secretly laughed in his heart. He did not show it on his face as he said, but Master said you are the master of this manor, so you should be the one receiving the guests. Chu Qingyan was already unhappy. When she heard this, she felt even more uncomfortable. This house is mine on the surface, but he's the one who paid for it. Tell him to entertain the guests himself. I'm not free. Huoling blinked and immediately turned around to convey these words to his master without missing a single word. Xiao Su tapped his fingers on the table as he listened. Then he said something and asked Huoling to pass on the message. Chu Qingyan had yet to enter her courtyard when Huoling ran over while huffing and puffing. Little Princess Consort, Master said that you are the mistress of this house. If there are guests, you have the right and responsibility to greet them. Huoling said without missing a single word. Chu Qingyan's heart turned cold. Was Big Ice Cube determined for her to come out? The main wife entertaining the concubine? That was the first thing she thought of. Little Princess Consort, are you all right? Huoling originally wanted to watch the play because it had always been his master being jealous without the little princess noticing. Now that he finally saw the little princess being jealous, when he saw her pale face, he immediately calmed himself down and asked this worriedly. Chu Qingyan took a deep breath. Since she would have to face them sooner or later, she might as well directly meet these people. She sorted out her mood and said without any emotion, let's go. We can't be rude. Huoling nodded in a daze. When Huoling was passing the message back and forth, the Liang family sisters had already drunk no less than 3 cups of tea. What happened? The person who passed on the message won't be coming back. Liang Danbing heavily put down the teacup with an unhappy expression. Although Liang Danjing did not say anything, her face was clearly not good. After all, she had been ruthlessly attacked by others, so no one would feel good. His Highness might be busy. Mama Hong comforted her from the side. Liang Danbing immediately said with a smile, Mama Hong, Danbing also knows that His Highness is busy, but Big Sister Chu is also the mistress of this place. No matter how busy she is, she still hasn't come out. This is a bit unreasonable. Even if us sisters are of the same generation as her, we shouldn't lose face for the Liang family. Second young miss is right. This 9th young Miss Chu is too rude. However, the Empress sent this old servant over this time for a mission, which is to teach 9th young Miss Chu court etiquette. When the time comes, this old servant will properly teach her. Mama Zheng's eyes were strict. When she spoke of Chu Qingyan, her voice was filled with disdain and disdain. The other 2 Mama nodded in agreement. The Liang family sisters looked at each other and saw the smiles in each other's eyes. The conversation inside, not a single word fell into Chu Qingyan's ears. Because she was a martial artist, her footsteps were light, so the people inside did not notice her. Chu Qingyan secretly thought. It seemed like these people were hot potatoes. Not only the Liang family sisters, there were also the mama from the palace. This was simply a disaster for her. She deliberately slowed down her footsteps. When the people inside heard this, they no longer spoke. She curled her lips into a graceful smile. Then, she stepped through the door and was met with dozens of unfriendly gazes. Chu Qingyan did not care as she looked at the 2 young girls sitting there. With just one look, Chu Qingyan could not help being shocked. As expected, they were rare beauties. I am Chu Qingyan. When I was listening to the servant's report, I was in a hurry and did not have time to change my clothes. I ask for everyone's forgiveness. Her lips still had a decent smile. When she saw the other side's shock at her appearance, she guessed that it was because she had not changed out of her male clothing. She had planned on changing out of it, but it was a pity that Huoling's message had delayed her a lot of time, so she had to rush over first. As soon as her words fell, she received quite a few disdainful gazes. Chu Qingyan did not care. Actually, when Chu Qingyan walked in, everyone's eyes lit up. This was because the person in front of them was just too handsome. It was rare to see such a handsome youth in the capital, but after she explained her identity, they were all shocked. This was because no one would have thought that the little bean sprout-like person from the past would turn into a butterfly in just 5 years. After hearing this, a person wearing a large white lotus flower pink dress revealed a beautiful neck. The dress flowed down as she stood up and the light flowed like a lotus in the water. She took 2 steps forward and slightly bowed to Chu Qingyan as she said, "So it's big sister Chu. This one is called Liang Danjing and this is my little sister, Liang Danbing." After she finished speaking, another woman dressed in a light yellow flowery dress slowly walked over. The butterfly hairpin on her head swayed back and forth, making her look extremely cute and playful. She followed Liang Danjing and bowed. "Danbing greets elder sister Chu." The two of them were very polite. Even if Chu Qingyan knew what their goal was, she could only greet them with a smile. "So it's my 2 cousins. No need to be polite, please sit, sit." Chu Qingyan raised her hand to support them. The 2 of them stood up and the smiles on their faces dazzled Chu Qingyan's eyes. They were truly a pair of beautiful sisters. Chapter 784. Chu Qingyan called for them to sit down. Just as they sat down, a sharp voice sounded. "Ninth young Miss Chu, these old servants were sent to Jiangnan by Her Highness the Empress." Nanny Hong stood out and slightly bowed as she spoke with a mocking expression. As soon as she finished speaking, the other 2 nannies also came forward and bowed as they introduced themselves. Chu Qingyan smiled as she looked at the 3 palace nannies standing in front of her. One look and she knew that they were not easy to get along with. She had already seen them earlier, but she automatically ignored them because of their high and mighty faces. Empress Liang didn't like her, but she endured this anger because she was the mother of the big ice cube. However, it didn't mean that these people could also step on her head. She seemed to have just learned of their identities and said with a bit of surprise, "Nannies, please rise. You are all old servants of Her Highness. Is it too much for Qingyan to be so courteous?" Nanny Hong said that although Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su hadn't officially married, their status was there. They should kneel and pay their respects. Unfortunately, they relied on their status in the palace and only bowed. They originally wanted to give Chu Qingyan a show of strength, but they didn't expect her to say this. Their expressions didn't look too good. After saying this, Chu Qingyan turned her attention to the 2 cousins and automatically ignored the nannies. "Third cousin, 4th cousin, you must be tired from the journey. How about I arrange a room for you to rest first? When night comes, we can have dinner together as a welcome dinner." Chu Qingyan said very warmly. Liang Danjing smiled gently, "Then we'll have to trouble Big Sister Chu." "You're welcome. Big Sister Chu, why don't I see eldest cousin? Does he not know that we're here?" Liang Danbing asked curiously from the side. "Little sister." Liang Danjing glanced at her. Liang Danbing pouted and said mischievously, "I just haven't seen eldest cousin in a long time and miss him. Moreover, didn't Aunt ask us to visit eldest cousin on her behalf? Tell me, am I right, Big Sister Chu?" As Liang Danbing spoke, she turned to Chu Qingyan. Chu Qingyan raised her head and was met with Liang Danbing's mocking expression. On the other hand, Liang Danjing raised her hand and tugged at her younger sister's hand, seemingly disapproving. However, Chu Qingyan could see the indifference in her eyes from the corner of her eyes. Although they were beautiful sisters, they were also sisters with thorns. Chu Qingyan left aside the few mamas felt very uncomfortable. In the palace, which one of them wasn't the object of flattery? Here, Chu Qingyan didn't serve them well and even let them stand. This was simply too much. At this time, Liang Danbing threw out a tactful rebuke, and the few nannies also had a good reason to attack. "Ninth Miss Chu, the 2 cousins have come to Jiangnan from afar. You'd better inform them. If His Highness asks about it, you won't be able to explain it, right?" Mammy Zheng said first. Nanny Hong added, "Although 9th young Miss Chu is the princess consort of Ying appointed by the retired emperor himself, she is not the princess consort of Ying yet. It's better if you don't make decisions on your own regarding Miss Gu." Granny Li, who was standing at the side, also stood up and sized Chu Qingyan up. Her eyes were filled with disdain as she said, "Ninth young Mistress Chu, you are also a lady from a respectable family. No matter what, you should not be dressed as a man in public. What's more, you are greeting guests. Chu Qingyan felt that these people's chatter was really annoying. They didn't even give her a chance to speak. Sure enough, 3 women could make a play. They didn't need the protagonist, but they could still sing. What's more, there were more than 3 people here. Ever since the Liang clan's beautiful sisters brought up the topic, they did not speak again. They were classic examples of watching from the sidelines. Chu Qingyan laughed in her heart. They were probably waiting to see how she would react so that they could take action against her in the future. After the few of them had finished their act, Chu Qingyan finally spoke up leisurely. Just now, the guard first informed His Highness, but His Highness is busy with official business. You know, His Highness is a typical workaholic. Everything must be solved on the same day when it comes to him, so he asked me to come out and greet you. If I don't treat you well, you can mention it to His Highness. I believe His Highness's hospitality will be more satisfactory. After he finished speaking, the faces of the people in the hall turned pale. They just wanted to find fault with Chu Qingyan and embarrass her. They didn't expect that she would mention His Highness and ask His Highness to greet them. At that time, several ministers wanted to please His Royal Highness who returned from a victory. They brought a lot of congratulatory gifts, but they were all thrown out of the mansion by the guard. So, they wanted His Royal Highness to entertain them. Did they want to die? Seeing that they were silent, Chu Qingyan picked up the teacup on the table, tapped the lid of the teacup, and smiled gently. Then her eyes fell on Mama Hong. Although His Highness and I are not married, the retired emperor's words are like gold and jade. His Majesty personally wrote the edict to be the concubine of the King of England. There are no other women in the inner yard. As the hostess, it seems reasonable for me to come out and greet you. Mama Hong knew that she had made a mistake just now, and she looked embarrassed. Chu Qingyan chuckled and turned to Nanny Li. This is not the inner courtyard, and it is not considered rude to the ladies. Furthermore, His Highness has never objected to my attire. Nanny, aren't you being too nosy? She meant that His Highness didn't care. Did she want to overshadow His Highness? She was offending her superiors. Mama Li knew that what she did was wrong and violated the precepts for women, but she didn't know how to refute. She could only suffer in silence. Chu Qingyan didn't look at their reactions. She bowed her head and tasted the tea. There was a faint cold light in her eyes. She dared to play tricks in front of me. She was tired of living. Liang Danjing saw that even the arrogant mamas were rendered speechless by Chu Qingyan. She couldn't help but take this lowly girl seriously. She couldn't help but admit that she felt that this person would be a hindrance to them, a huge hindrance. However, since they were already in Jiangnan, she would be the Minister of Defense in the future. Liang Danbing's gaze landed on Chu Qingyan and the other nannies, and she smiled coldly. Then, she said childishly, since big cousin is busy with work, let's not disturb him. Anyway, we will be able to see him during dinner tonight. Then, we will pass on aunt's concern to him then. We have been here for a few months already, and there is no need to rush. As soon as these words came out, several mamas also echoed a few words. Chu Qingyan looked at Liang Danbing, who was smiling brightly, and couldn't help but smile. Her words had incited everyone to attack Chu Qingyan. Of course, it was also because the old servants wanted to use this as a pretext to make a fuss. Chu Qingyan's words were also used as a pretext. She was indeed from the Liang family. She didn't know whether she was really lively and cheerful, or... Chapter 785. After walking for such a long time, even if the carriages and horses were of the best quality, they were still delicate girls. After a few words, they showed signs of fatigue. Chu Qingyan arranged for the servants to take them down to rest. After they left the hall, Chu Qingyan relaxed the tension in her heart and body. Her expression was a little lazy as she leaned against the back of the chair. Although she didn't like the fact that Empress Liang sent people over, this was the ancient times. Chu Qingyan could understand the feelings of parents wanting their children to have children. She wouldn't blame them, but what made her heart cold was the big ice cube's attitude. She originally thought that he would casually reject them like he usually did when his subordinates sent people over. But this time, his ambiguous approach made her heart uneasy. She felt that dealing with these people was more tiring than fighting with others. Because she represented the big ice cube, she didn't receive these people on the surface, but the power behind them. Whether it was Empress Liang or the Liang family, she could ignore them, but she couldn't not consider the big ice cube. After so long, she felt a little tired. Xining, who was standing on the side, saw everything. When she looked at her master, her expression was distressed. "Master, are you not feeling well?" "No, I probably didn't sleep well last night." Chu Qingyan pinched the space between her eyebrows and smiled indifferently. Xining pursed her lips and asked cautiously, "When you saw the two misses, did your heart—" Her unfinished words made Chu Qingyan smile lightly. "Xining, do you feel that your master is very pitiful?" Xining quickly waved her hand to deny it. "Master, what are you thinking? How could this servant think that?" Chu Qingyan raised her hand and knocked her forehead. "I'm just teasing you. You really can't take a scare. Look at how timid you are." Xining sighed and then looked at her with complaint. "Master, you're always bullying me." But seeing her master smile, Xining was relieved. How could she not know what Xining was thinking? Chu Qingyan's smile couldn't help but fade a little. It turned out that she had become someone who even worried about the people around her. How uncute. She gently tugged at the corner of her mouth and concealed her expression. Then, she stood up as if the self-deprecating smile just now did not exist. "Mistress, where are you going?" Xining followed her. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows and said, "Go to the kitchen and tell them about the dinner. Don't we have guests at home? Just let this servant run errands for you." Xining volunteered. Chu Qingyan shook her head and smiled. "You don't understand. There are some things that I have to do personally." Xining puffed up her cheeks and was a little confused. When she left, she realized that her master did not want others to talk about her. Thinking about it, this kind of master would be very tired. There were already enough business matters for her master to worry about. She really hoped that the two cousins would quickly go back. Chu Qingyan had just left when she saw Hualing waiting at the door. She raised her eyebrows. "His Highness sent you over?" But the two cousins have already gone to rest and are living in the west wing of the side courtyard. After she finished speaking, Chu Qingyan felt as though she was suffocating in her chest. Hualing smiled and shook his head. "Little princess, this subordinate is looking for you. Master wants you to go to the study after you're done entertaining the guests." That sigh of relief was suddenly released. Chu Qingyan felt that she was making a big fuss over a minor issue, but when she thought of the two delicate cousins, her heart felt a little sour. Did he say what it was about? Master did not say anything about this. Understood. I'm going to the kitchen first and will be there in a bit. Chu Qingyan nodded. Hualing did not immediately leave and pretended to casually say, Master has been eating so little these past few meals. I don't know if it's because the food in the kitchen is not to your liking or something else." Chu Qingyan's footsteps paused before she calmly continued walking. Hualing snickered and then happily walked back while whistling. When they arrived at the kitchen maids immediately stopped what they were doing and respectfully bowed to Chu Qingyan. Everyone had a sincere smile on their faces. These kitchen maids were all recruited by Chu Qingyan from the local area. She did not have the arrogant attitude of a rich family, and she was very understanding and approachable. Thus, all the servants in the residence liked her very much. Chu Qingyan waved her hand to let them go back to work. Then she said a few words to Manager Chen, especially the food for the two cousins and tonight's banquet. Manager Chen was a woman around 30 years old, so she agreed to everything after hearing it. When Chu Qingyan had her prepare the ingredients, Manager Chen said with a smile, "The eldest young master hasn't touched his breakfast yet. Is it not to his liking?" These words were similar to what Hualing had said before. Chu Qingyan couldn't help feeling annoyed. Why were the two of them speaking the same way? He wasn't a little child. If he didn't eat, then he wouldn't eat. If he was hungry, then wouldn't he eat? But from the smile in Manager Chen's eyes, it was clear that the young couple was at odds with each other. Chu Qingyan felt that it was too dazzling. She couldn't blame Manager Chen for thinking this because in this palace, the eldest young master was cold to everyone. Only this master in front of her was not normal. The two of them were like jade, and they looked very pleasing to the eye when they stood together. It was also because Chu Qingyan did not put on any airs that Manager Chen dared to ask. Chu Qingyan knew that they were concerned, so she said with a smile, "Don't worry, it might be that he's been too busy recently, so he hasn't had time to eat. Just do your own things and don't worry about anything else." Manager Chen nodded and left. Chu Qingyan let out a sigh of relief. She wanted to turn and leave the kitchen, but her ears were filled with Big Ice Cube's words about how little he ate. She shook her head and then stopped in her tracks. "Is there something else Master needs?" Xining poked her head out from behind her and asked in a confused voice. "Is there red and green beans in the kitchen?" Although the kitchen maids were confused by her master's sudden question, they still nodded. "There are peanuts and other things." "Does Master want to make 8 treasure kanji?" Chu Qingyan nodded. "Is it for His Highness?" Manager Chen walked out at this time while wiping her hands. She had a smile on her face. Chu Qingyan gave a light cough. "I'm hungry." "This servant understands." Manager Chen agreed with a smile, then said to the kitchen maids behind her, "Prepare 2 portions. Quickly go wash the rice and cook the kanji. Don't let our masters starve." Manager Chen purposely emphasized her tone for the sake of 2 people. The kitchen maids understood tacitly and smiled as they busied themselves. Chu Qingyan's face heated up. "Really, these people," she stomped her feet and walked out of the kitchen. Xining followed behind, covering her mouth as she snickered, then strode forward to catch up. "Master, don't walk so fast, this servant can't keep up." No matter when and what happened, once the other party was involved, she would immediately abandon all conflicts, dissatisfaction, and grievances and put her heart and soul in front of him. This was deep love. Chapter 786. When Chu Qingyan came to the study, Hualing was already waiting at the door. He personally opened the door for her, and when he bowed, he said in a low voice, "Little Princess Fei, Master's mood doesn't seem very good." Towards Hualing's kind reminder, Chu Qingyan couldn't help rolling her eyes. She was also in a bad mood, so who could she tell? But since it was the matter and not the person, Chu Qingyan still nodded to show she understood. Taking a deep breath, she walked in. When Chu Qingyan appeared at the door, Xiao Su already knew. But when she came in, he picked up a book and pretended to be seriously reading it. "Big Ice Cube, what are you looking for me for?" The moment Chu Qingyan entered the room, she saw that Jiang Yi was calm and composed. She was furious. She had been putting on a one-man show for the past 2 days, and she had been sulking on her own. He, on the other hand, was eating, drinking, and sleeping as usual. He was not affected at all. She really could not take this lying down. Xiao Su heard her stiff tone and frowned, but he didn't probe further. Has the Young family's people been arranged? Sometimes, no matter how high one's intelligence was, in front of the person they liked, it was useless. So Xiao Su, who was lacking in EQ, made a very bad start and stepped on a firecracker. "So it's because you're thinking about the 2 biomis of the Young family. They came from afar and are guests, how could I dare neglect them? They are also girls that your imperial mother carefully picked out, so I can't wait to warmly entertain them." Chu Qingyan felt her heart turn cold. She stared at him and snorted insincerely. This was the first time he had heard her speak to him in such a tone. Xiao Su had been ignored by her for the past 2 days and his mood wasn't very good. Hearing this, his eyes darkened. "I'm just asking a question, why are you acting so strange?" "I'm acting strange?" Chu Qingyan pointed at herself and fiercely threw down her sleeve. "Am I wrong? Don't think I don't know what you're thinking. Let me tell you, I hate people who say one thing but do another. If you really want to, Chu Qingyan opened her mouth to say the word concubine, but she couldn't bring herself to say it. What do you want? Why don't you tell me? Didn't you say you knew what I was thinking? Why don't you continue? Xiao Su was also annoyed by her nonsensical words, and his tone couldn't help but become colder. He wanted to find a reason to let her talk to him in the study, but she complained first. He didn't know what she was talking about, and he felt a headache coming on. But after he said this, before she could continue, he saw her bright eyes turn red bit by bit, and finally, they were filled with tears. Xiao Su was slightly stunned. He immediately stood up and wanted to reach out to pull her in front of him for a closer look, but she stepped back and avoided him. Xiao Su's expression immediately darkened. What are you doing? Chu Qingyan became even angrier when she heard this. Are you saying that I'm being unreasonable? Xiao Su didn't answer. Clearly, this silence made her even more embarrassed and angry. Okay, I'm being unreasonable. This is a girl's right. You can't control it. You don't have to control me. I don't need you to control me. Chu Qingyan bit her lip and forced the tears back into her eyes. She didn't know how much this action hurt the person in front of her. Xiao Su originally wanted to wash his hands and ignore her, but when he saw her like this, the anger that had just risen was instantly extinguished. In love, many times, a girl would complain in her heart, "Why don't you understand me?" And in the eyes of a boy, "Why is she crying again?" In fact, this was because in addition to the gender difference between men and women, it was also because of the different brain circuits between men and women. Therefore, lovers often bickered because they didn't understand what they were thinking. Xiao Su rubbed his eyebrows. He was used to the little girl being sensible and obedient and doing everything properly. Now, she looked as if she had been greatly wronged. Like a red-eyed rabbit, stubborn and pitiful, he didn't know where to start. If she was bullied by others, the little girl would definitely be able to bully back. If she couldn't, he could secretly help her get back at them. However, the person in front of him was himself. Xiao Su was a little helpless. What did he say or do wrong? He reflected on what he had just said. He had just casually mentioned it, but the little girl was like a firecracker that was ignited in an instant. On the other hand, Chu Qingyan secretly wiped the corners of her eyes and silently cursed in her heart. She was already so sad, but the big ice cube didn't even say a word of comfort. It was really too disappointing. The more Chu Qingyan thought about it, the angrier she became. Even her eyes were filled with fire as she looked at him. Just as the two of them were thinking, there was a knock on the door. Following that, they heard Xining's voice from outside. "Master, the 8 treasures porridge for His Highness is here. Should I bring it in?" They were quarreling at this time. Why did the kitchen come to join in the fun? When she raised her head, she met the big ice cube's smiling gaze. Chu Qingyan was angry and embarrassed. "That's what I want to eat. Who said it was for others? Bring it back to the courtyard. I'll go back later." Oh. Xining hurriedly replied. When she turned around, Xining whispered to herself, but when the kitchen said to prepare 2 portions, Master didn't stop them. How strange. What kind of people were Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan? They didn't need to make any effort to hear this little bit of sound clearly. Chu Qingyan had the heart to dig a hole in the ground. She wasn't afraid of a godlike opponent, but she was afraid of a pig-like teammate. The courage that she had gathered with great difficulty to face the big ice cube dissipated at this time because of these words. Chu Qingyan stomped her feet and planned to turn around and leave. But just as she took a step, her wrist was grabbed. Chu Qingyan turned around and glared at the person behind her. "Why are you grabbing me?" "I'm hungry, I want to eat." Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. "If you're hungry, eat here. It saves time and effort. I don't want to be with you." Chu Qingyan struggled in a fit of pique, trying to break free from his restraint. Xiao Su raised his other hand and stroked her head. He said gently, "Stop fooling around. Let's talk after we eat." "I don't want to talk to you." "Don't think too highly of yourself." Chu Qingyan harumphed. Xiaosu knew that she didn't mean what she said. He curved his lips and didn't reply to her. Instead, he said to the people outside, "Bring it in." Xining didn't go far. When she heard this, she responded loudly and cheerfully pushed the door open to enter. The moment she entered, she met with two different gazes. Her master's eyes were filled with deep resentment, and His Highness's, refreshing gaze. It was the first time she saw His Highness smile so warmly at her. Xining couldn't help but shiver. She swallowed her saliva and quickly put down the tray. After arranging the bowls and chopsticks, she immediately slipped away. This must be a place of trouble. It was better for her to go somewhere cool. Chapter 787. Xiaosu glanced at the steaming big bowl of 8 treasure porridge on the table and said with a half-smile, "Can you finish such a big bowl?" "None of your business." Chu Qingyan had already flung his hand away before Xining came in and sat down. Actually, she had no appetite at all at this moment. Looking at such a big bowl was really giving her a headache. Xiaosu laughed, "Didn't you eat quite a lot for lunch?" Chu Qingyan turned around and glared at the person sitting beside her. "It must be the servant who told you too much." Xiaosu didn't say anything. Even if it wasn't the servant who told her too much, he knew clearly what she ate for her 3 meals a day and how much she ate. However, he didn't need to tell her these things. When he didn't say anything, Chu Qingyan remembered that the two of them were still quarreling and immediately turned her head away angrily. Out of sight, out of mind. At this moment, she heard the sound of porcelain clinking and couldn't help but turn her head back again. She saw him holding a spoon to scoop the porridge again. Her gaze fell on the hand holding the spoon. His joints were well-defined, slender, and well-proportioned. No matter which angle she looked at it from, it could be said to be perfect. In a flash, a bowl full of porridge appeared in front of her. "Eat it while it's hot." At this moment, Chu Qingyan was still feeling uncomfortable. How could she be seduced by beauty? She was sulking at herself. "I'm not eating." "Eat it yourself." With that, Xiaosu smiled faintly. "Didn't you say that you wanted to eat it yourself?" Chu Qingyan wished she could bite off her own tongue. Xiaosu laughed and shook his head. He took the bowl and stirred the porridge with the spoon. After letting out some steam, he scooped up a spoonful and handed it to a certain angry little rabbit. Chu Qingyan stared blankly at the piping hot porridge in front of her. She couldn't help but shift her gaze to him. She opened her mouth, but didn't know what to say. At this moment, Xiaosu reached forward and fed it to her. "Try it and see how it tastes." Chu Qingyan put it in her mouth and thought gloomily, "It's all the same taste." Before she could eat it, she saw the person in front of her using the spoon just now to take a bite. She couldn't help but widen her eyes. "The texture is not bad." Xiaosu nonchalantly scooped another spoonful and brought it back to her. Chu Qingyan was embarrassed. "I'm not going to eat your saliva." Xiaosu didn't think much of it. "Don't you eat a lot?" He was referring to their usual kisses. A blush spread to Chu Qingyan's cheeks. It was really hot. Seriously, weren't they quarreling? Why did the style suddenly change? Xiaosu could not take his eyes off her rosy cheeks. He suddenly felt that the sweet porridge was a little tasteless. It was not as good as her. He coughed softly to conceal the thoughts that had emerged in his mind and turned to eat the porridge. Chu Qingyan saw that the spoon had changed direction and felt unhappy again. "How can you eat my porridge?" Xiaosu looked at her deeply. His eyes lit up and he suddenly said ambiguously, "Then I'll return it to you." Chu Qingyan blinked. She didn't know what he meant. However, the person in front of her suddenly moved closer. Chu Qingyan instinctively wanted to dodge, but the person in front of her reached out and pulled her into his embrace. She couldn't react in time and couldn't move at all. Then she saw that pair of dark eyes move closer and closer. His long and curly eyelashes slowly closed. Chu Qingyan seemed to have been bewitched. She stopped struggling and closed her eyes along with him. His soft lips covered hers. His agile tongue pried open her lips and teeth. Immediately after, a sweet and greasy scent drifted over. Chu Qingyan instantly widened her eyes. This, feeding. How could Xiao Su, who was immersed in it, allow her to be distracted? He intensified his attacks and soon, she fell into his arms. Then, they intertwined. When the sweet porridge disappeared between their lips and teeth, they couldn't tell who had eaten more. However, Chu Qingyan thought that she would never forget this taste. It was so sweet that it was sickeningly sweet. When they separated, Chu Qingyan was like a fish that had been out of water for a long time. She took in big mouthfuls of air. Xiao Su looked at the person who was limp in his arms and curled his lips in satisfaction. She finally stopped and didn't look at him with hatred as if he was an enemy. He took the tea from the side and brought it to her lips. He smiled slyly. This is what I drank just now. Do you want it? Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes at him helplessly. She had had enough. Why didn't he ask when he came over just now? They couldn't even tell how much saliva they had eaten. Xiao Su's eyes curved. He opened the teacup and brought the tea into her mouth. The porridge didn't taste sweet just now, but after the two of them intertwined, it was a little too sweet when it reached her throat. She had been thirsty for a long time, so when the water was brought over, she didn't care about their current position. She took his hand and drank it in big mouthfuls. When Xiao Su put down the teacup, Chu Qingyan had already left his arms. Thinking about their quarrel just now, she became unhappy. Don't think that I can forgive you just because you used a honey trap. The person in front of him had peach blossom cheeks and water stains on the side of her lips. She was translucent and moving. Xiao Su's throat tightened before he moved away from her lips. He thought about her words carefully and said with a hint of teasing in his words, "Then you fell into a trap." Chu Qingyan pursed her lips. The big ice block was getting more and more shameless. The little fellow's face turned even redder. Xiao Su's lips curved slightly, but his tone was serious. How did I offend you? Why are you so angry today? She looked up and saw his serious face. Chu Qingyan felt powerless as if she had used all her strength to hit cotton. She had been talking for a long time, but he didn't understand a single thing. It's nothing. Eat the porridge, it's getting cold. She felt that she no longer had any fighting spirit at the moment. Xiao Su slightly raised his eyebrows. He wanted to ask what was going on, but seeing her reach out to help him ladle a bowl of porridge in front of him, he couldn't help but think that the little fellow had finally calmed down, so it was better not to provoke her. There were some things that didn't have to be pursued to the end. He could investigate it himself. So he moved the bowl and lowered his head to eat. Chu Qingyan saw that he finally started to eat and the stone in her heart was put down. She stirred the bowl of porridge in front of her from time to time, but her gaze fell on the person in front of her. This kind of person who could take out a white porcelain spoon to look like a jade pearl, as long as he took off his mask and revealed his true appearance to the world, there would definitely be countless women willing to follow him. Not to mention his status, just his side profile was enough to move people's hearts. She looked at his hand. It was slender like bamboo. He could hold a pen, a sword, and even the way he held a spoon was so elegant. Chu Qingyan was dazzled and her thoughts drifted away. The Liang family's two sisters had outstanding looks and proper manners. They were the type that men liked. Chu Qingyan thought in her heart. This Empress Liang had a good plan. No matter which type the big ice block liked, one was more quiet and one was more active. There would always be one type that would be satisfied. Her heart, once again, felt bitter. Chapter 788. After the two of them finished their porridge, Chu Qingyan propped up her chin with one hand and said hatefully to him, "Don't think that I'll be soft-hearted just because you're on a hunger strike. Let me tell you, my heart is as cold and hard as a rock." After saying this, Chu Qingyan made a face at him with her teeth bared. Who said that a woman in love would lose her IQ? This was a classic example. Xiao Su tried hard to hold back his laughter. There was no one else who could be so duplicitous. Although he found it funny, he still had to make a statement. I'm not on a hunger strike. Chu Qingyan obviously didn't believe him. Liar. Xiao Su explained, it's just that I don't have much of an appetite because you're not here. Chu Qingyan snorted. Do you mean that I have the ability to whet your appetite? I think you can be described as a feast for the eyes, but you can say that if you want. Xiao Su spread his hands. Chu Qingyan's face heated up. Oh no, she was being teased again. Big ice block, that's enough. Indeed, Xiao Su was teasing her like this because he was full. Seeing her revealing her usual shy look, his heart couldn't help but itch. Chu Qingyan knew that she couldn't win against him at this time, so she stood up with a whoosh and looked down at him. Actually, with his height, they could only look at each other at the same level at this time. Tonight, I'm going to hold a welcoming dinner for your two cousins. Don't forget to attend. Otherwise, they'll think that I don't want you to see them and hide you. Humph, you're so big, how can I hide you? Chu Qingyan turned to leave after saying this, leaving Xiao Su deep in thought. It wasn't easy to get the little one to accompany him for a meal, but tonight, a few outsiders appeared. The person who was in a good mood after eating his fill started to feel uncomfortable again. Night came as scheduled. The Liang sisters arrived at the living room early. As one of the hosts, Chu Qingyan came out to greet them. As usual, the nannies were nitpicking at her from the side, saying that she was a future princess consort, so how could she dress so simply, that it would be beneath her status to receive guests, and that she would neglect the guests, and so on. The corners of Chu Qingyan's mouth twitched. If she had a hairpin on her head, she would probably become the 1,000-hairpin guanyin. Originally, she didn't like to wear jewelry. Today, for the sake of the occasion, she specially wore a few pearl hairpins. She didn't expect that she would still become a target of gossip. However, it also proved that if people insisted on finding fault with you, they could also find bones in an egg. Liang Danjing, who was standing at the side, tried to help her out. Sister Chu is a natural beauty. You don't have to wear gold and silver like us. Chu Qingyan gave her thanks with a grin. This help really wasn't much. When Liang Danbing heard this, she glanced at Chu Qingyan. Even though her sister's words were just to sell a favor to Chu Qingyan, it had to be said that when Chu Qingyan had appeared in women's clothing, she had really stunned everyone in the hall. Even though she didn't want to admit defeat, she had to admit that this person's appearance, even the number one beauty in the capital wouldn't be able to stand next to her and compete with her for glory. Originally, she had thought that she was outstanding enough in men's clothing, but she didn't think that she would be even more dazzling in women's clothing. Liang Danjing stood at the side and intentionally or unintentionally looked at Chu Qingyan. She was wearing a fiery crimson dress with irregular folds from her waist to the hem. With every step she took, large peony flowers bloomed. Her slender waist was tied with a red belt. She was thin, but it wasn't that she couldn't be held in one's hand. Instead, she was like an emerald green bamboo. With her straight back, she gave people a kind of arrogant aura that couldn't be ignored. Her slender eyebrows were long and slanted. They weren't weak, but added a heroic spirit. Her deep eyes were deep and long, beautiful but not charming. Her pink lips were slightly curved. Even if she wasn't smiling, she gave people a feeling of being bathed in the spring breeze. Her skin was creamy, but it wasn't pure white. When the petals fell into the water, they rippled with a red shadow. As a woman, she was already subdued by the outstanding appearance of the person in front of her, let alone any other man. Liang Danjing slightly pursed her lips. Her gaze moved away from Chu Qingyan's body without leaving a trace. If the enemy didn't move, she couldn't disturb the morale of the army. Even if this battle wasn't going to be easy, they had to pick up their weapons and kill her without leaving a single one alive. When she was dressed as a man, Chu Qingyan was surrounded by people of all ages. Now that she was dressed as a woman, she didn't care at all. After all, she wouldn't lose a piece of flesh from being stared at. Because it was almost the end of spring and the beginning of summer, the days were long. Although it was already evening, the sky was still bright. Chu Qingyan estimated that it was about time, so she ordered the kitchen to serve the dishes. Big sister Chu, why isn't eldest cousin here yet? Is he delayed by something? Liang Danbing didn't really want to see this eldest cousin of hers. It was just that the rumors were too bad. She kept mentioning it because she already saw Chu Qingyan as an enemy. She didn't want her to feel comfortable, so she kept finding fault with her. Chu Qingyan really didn't want to pay attention to her, but seeing how she kept causing trouble for her, she felt very apologetic. She couldn't help replying, "Haste makes waste, Bing Ju, don't be impatient." When these words came out, Liang Danbing's face turned red as she glared at her, but she couldn't say a single word to refute it. She could only turn her head to the side. Chu Qingyan let out a sigh of relief. This little girl finally stopped, that was enough. But she was a bit confused right now. Did something happen to Big Ice Cube? But it wasn't time yet, so she suppressed her emotions. Speak of the devil. Footsteps came from outside the door and then Hualing walked in first. He said to Chu Qingyan, "Little Princess Consort, His Highness is here." Following that, Xiao Su slowly appeared at the door. Because of the rumors, the Liang family's beautiful sisters were afraid of Xiao Su, but they were still young girls. The last time they saw him was several years ago, so they were still very curious about him and looked forward to seeing him. When the ice-cold mask entered their eyes, the Liang family's beautiful sisters trembled from the coldness in his eyes. In order to leave a good impression on their eldest cousin today, they had chosen expensive and thin clothes. Even though it was the end of spring, the night wind was still cold. The two's lips were slightly pale, but it was more of a psychological effect. Chu Qingyan saw the mask on his face that she hadn't seen in a long time and her heart twitched, feeling a bit of pain. Because in the past few days, Big Ice Cube had been staying with her in the house, so she had forgotten that every time he faced outsiders, he always wore a mask. In reality, these days were very tiring. At this moment, her heart ached for him. Eldest cousin. The Liang family's two sisters immediately stood up and bowed to Xiao Su. Xiao Su nodded. He walked past them and sat down next to the little fellow before looking at her. Chu Qingyan blushed with shame. This is your cousin, you're not greeting her. Come. Xiao Su winked at her. Chu Qingyan could only say to the Liang family's two sisters, "Sit, the food is here, don't be polite." When the Liang family's beautiful sisters saw Xiao Su for the first time, they felt his coldness. They gave a cold shiver. Chapter 789. Although the two Liang sisters were dissatisfied with Chu Qingyan's greeting, they had no choice but to sit down and eat. Xiao Su did not see the two of them the entire time, eating elegantly and appropriately. The two Liang sisters were unwilling to let their first meeting end like this. They came with a purpose, so they could not waste their time on eating. Thus, Liang Danbing rolled her black eyes, then smiled playfully and said to Xiao Su, "Eldest cousin, we brother and sister haven't seen each other in a long time. Do you still remember your younger sister's name?" Xiao Su frowned and looked up at her. Was her name important to him? Liang Danbing did not expect this question. It was as if she had fallen into a bottomless pit, and there was no response. Although she was a bit embarrassed, she was also someone from an aristocratic family, and her ability to smooth things over was not bad. She only heard her own question and answer. Younger sister sees that eldest cousin is so forgetful that he definitely won't remember. Younger sister is Bing girl. 5 years ago, younger sister was only 10 years old. As the saying goes, a girl changes 18 times between childhood and womanhood. Eldest cousin probably won't be able to recognize me. After saying this, she smiled like a little girl, without any shrewdness in her heart. Chu Qingyan greatly admired this little girl's courage to kick an iron plate. At this time, Liang Danjing also spoke. When I first met eldest cousin, he was not as tall as this table. Now that time has passed, we have all grown up. Liang Danjing smiled gently, and the atmosphere changed from the initial dull to lively. Unfortunately, Xiao Su did not speak, and only nodded out of courtesy. The main character ignored her, but Chu Qingyan had to suffer. She could only smile at the side and ask the main character to eat more. Although the two Liang sisters did not receive a response, they were already mentally prepared and did not feel disappointed. Instead, they felt that this Xiao Su was similar to the rumors. The only difference was that although this Xiao Su's face was burned, wearing a mask did not diminish the noble aura he exuded. On the contrary, just by looking at his side profile, they could feel this man's tall and straight stature. The young girl's heart was a bit moved. Or it could be said that their fates had already been decided when they left the capital, so all they could do was think of a way to gain the favor of this person. So in order to achieve their goal and confuse their opponent, they had to confuse themselves first. When Liang Danbing saw that Xiao Su was ignoring her, she turned her attention to Chu Qingyan. She began to ask about feminine things, such as embroidery, poetry, or other things that could show off her identity and demean Chu Qingyan. To be honest, Chu Qingyan wasn't very interested in embroidery, but it didn't mean that she didn't understand it. After all, she had a mother who was very proficient in embroidery. Therefore, Chu Qingyan was able to answer smoothly. Liang Danjing was surprised. She had thought that Chu Qing hadn't grown up in the capital and that Liancheng was a remote village. She hadn't expected her to be so proficient in these things. Although Chu Qingyan replied with a smile on her face, she was smiling so much that her face was about to stiffen. Couldn't the two of them just quietly be beautiful women? Or should he just let her be a quiet beauty? Just as Liang Danbing felt that this wasn't enough and was about to switch to her own specialty, Xiao Su, who hadn't said a word since entering the room, suddenly spoke. Don't talk when eating. After these words were spoken, the people at the table became so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. Chu Qingyan sighed in her heart. As expected, when he didn't speak, it was fine, but when he did, it was shocking. At this time, a piece of pork rib fell into her bowl. When she raised her head, she saw Xiao Su take away his chopsticks and the Liang sisters couldn't hide their shock. Chu Qingyan felt that the pent-up anger in her chest had suddenly dissipated. She turned her head slightly and looked at the person next to her. Her eyes were full of smiles. Then she returned the favor and also picked up a piece of pork rib for him. Xiao Su didn't refuse and put it in his mouth. Didn't they say that big cousin was cold to people? Didn't they say that big cousin didn't know how to be gentle with women after years of fighting? Didn't they say that big cousin had a serious obsession with cleanliness? Why didn't it match the information they received? The Liang sisters' appetite completely disappeared because they couldn't digest the scene in front of them. Previously, when they were still in the capital, Aunt had said that Chu Qingyan was just a rock in their path and would not pose any threat. As long as they could stand beside eldest cousin, they would be able to kick Chu Qingyan aside. However, what they saw now was not the case. The Liang sisters looked at each other and received each other's information. After looking away, they seriously ate their meal. It seemed that some things needed to be considered at length. Chu Qingyan saw that the two of them had calmed down, and that the huge rock in her heart had disappeared. She regained her lost appetite, and she was able to eat the rice in her bowl with ease. After the meal, the Liang sisters had been silent for a long time and could finally speak. But at this time, Hualing quickly walked in. Master, there's an urgent report. Xiao Su nodded and then patted the hand of the person beside him, indicating for her to take good care of him. Then he stood up and confidently left without a trace. The Liang sisters who had prepared a stomach full of words watched him walk away like this. They were stunned in place, as if they had been slapped in the face. Chu Qingyan looked at the two of them who were in high spirits and then had a basin of cold water poured over them. It was quite funny and she wanted to laugh, but she felt that it wasn't very kind. So she suppressed her laughter and stood up to say to the two of them, Miss Cousins, you must be tired from the long journey. I have already had someone boil some hot water for you. If there's anything you need, just order the servants. If there's anything you want to eat, just send someone to tell me. Since she had already said this, Liang Danjing and Hualing didn't have anything else to say. They could only nod and thank her before preparing to leave. Watching the two of them leave gracefully, Chu Qingyan couldn't help holding her head and shaking her head when she thought about how the two of them had tried to step on her to gain the big ice cube's attention. Who couldn't see through such a little trick? When Chu Qingyan ordered the servants to clean up the leftovers and then walked out, there were already 3 big Buddhas waiting outside. Chu Qingyan saw this scene and knew that Empress Liang was going to make trouble for her. Chu Qingyan walked forward with a smile. Nannies, what's the matter? Why are you waiting here? Just now in the hall, these people were very respectful and attentive to the big ice cube. They didn't have the arrogant attitude at all. She thought that they probably wanted to make trouble for her. Nanny Zheng looked at Chu Qingyan and was obviously very dissatisfied. She said coldly. Ninth Miss Chu, although His Highness usually doesn't restrict you, as the princess of a country, you must have the etiquette that a princess should have. So the Empress ordered us to be responsible for teaching you the rules of the palace during your stay in Jiangnan. We hope that Ninth Miss Chu can cooperate well. Hearing this kind and impatient tone, Chu Qingyan snorted coldly in her heart. They really came to make trouble for her. Chapter 790. When Chu Qingyan walked into the courtyard while stretching, she found that her room was brightly lit. She couldn't help but raise her eyebrows in confusion. Xining, who was beside her, shook her head, indicating that she didn't know. She faintly had an answer in her heart as she walked up the steps and stepped into the room. As expected, the person who had said that he had an urgent matter was currently standing leisurely in her room, flipping through the papers that she had written and drawn when she was bored. Why are you so late? Hearing the noise, Xiaosu didn't even turn his head as he spoke indifferently. Chu Qingyan shrugged. Isn't it because your imperial mother sent people over? As she spoke, she walked to the table and poured herself a cup of water, slowly drinking it. Xiaosu finally raised his head and asked in confusion, what do you mean? Chu Qingyan heard this and said in a self-mocking tone, perhaps imperial mother felt that a country girl like me wasn't worthy of her noble son, so she hated me for failing to live up to her expectations and sent a few teaching mamas to help me up the wall. Xiaosu was amused by her tone and walked 2 steps to her. He raised his hand and placed it on her head, smiling brightly. You're not that bad. Of course she didn't think that she was that bad, but how could she stop others from thinking that way? And what kind of tone was this big ice cube using? It seemed like he was taking pleasure in her misfortune. She simply couldn't tolerate it. Just as she was about to explode, the person in front of her shook a piece of paper in his hand. The mask on his face had already been taken off, and at this moment, his eyes were bright. The dim yellow candlelight fell on his face, sparkling brightly. That jade-like face seemed to be covered in a thin layer of mist, making people unable to see it clearly and wanting to get closer to see it clearly. And it was because she was bewitched by his expression that she didn't notice what was written on the paper in his hand. Xiaosu wanted to say something, but he stopped himself in the end. Then, he quietly put the piece of paper into his sleeve. Come back to your senses. He nonchalantly bent his fingers and tapped her smooth forehead with the back of his fingers as he teased her. Chu Qingyan felt a slight pain in her forehead. She bit her lip and complained to herself, beauty is alluring, beauty is alluring. Don't hit my head all the time, I'm going to be stupid. Xiaosu was amused. Can you become smarter if you don't knock? Chu Qingyan refused to look at him out of spite. Seeing that the person in front of him didn't answer, Xiaosu lowered his head slightly. What entered his eyes was her beautiful neck that was exposed to the side. The lines of her neck were beautiful, and her skin was like jade. His throat went dry. He suppressed the inexplicable feeling in his body and changed the topic. Are you satisfied with my performance tonight? This sentence made Chu Qingyan slightly stunned. It took her a long time to understand what he was referring to. Moreover, his tone sounded as if he had done something incredible and was waiting for the affirmation of someone he cared about. She suddenly felt a tingling sensation in her heart, as if she was emotionally moved. Performance? What are you referring to? I'm not you. How would I know what you're talking about? Chu Qingyan pretended not to know what he was talking about. She just wanted him to say it himself. His gaze fell on her face again. Xiao Su smirked and reached out to pinch her pink cheeks. He said in a tone that made her stomp her feet. You're so smart. I know you understand. Chu Qingyan was at a loss for words. She rolled her eyes at him in a muffled voice. Now he had the nerve to admit that she was smart. I don't want to talk to you. Hurry up and go to sleep. I'm going to change my clothes and rest. She pushed him and began to chase him away. Xiao Su frowned. So early? Chu Qingyan looked at the sky. It was indeed a little early, but she had no choice. She sighed sadly. I have to change my schedule in the future. Those old nannies want me to wake up early tomorrow to set the rules. It's my first day, so I can't make a mistake, right? Hearing this, Xiao Su's brows furrowed. If you don't want to, then refuse them. You don't have to do something you don't like. She really wanted to ignore them, but they were sent by the big ice cube's Mufei. She couldn't scold or hit them. She could only coax and treat them well. This was the so-called, it's easier to invite the devil than to send him away. Chu Qingyan shook her head and said with a smile, all right, don't worry about it. I haven't seen what the palace's rules look like yet. It's for me to see them first. Who knows, it might come in handy when I return to the palace in the future. Xiao Su knew that she had made up her mind and didn't say anything else. He raised his hand to press her head against his chest and said in a low voice, if you find it difficult, just tell me. Chu Qingyan rubbed against his chest before nodding in agreement. After he left, Chu Qingyan weakly leaned against the table and muttered to herself, who wants to see these rules? I'll deal with it first. I can't embarrass the big ice cube. The Liang sisters returned to the courtyard and sat together to talk. Sister, I don't like Chu Qingyan very much. Liang Danbing said bluntly with disdain in her voice. Liang Danjing said, this Chu Qingyan doesn't give me the feeling that she's like the young misses of the officials' families in the capital. She's a bit unreliable. She wasn't as straightforward as her sister. She was good at observation. In the short two encounters, she felt that Chu Qingyan didn't care about them at all. Or rather, she didn't care about their appearance at all. She didn't show any jealousy or rejection the entire day. It was as if she really was entertaining her cousins as their sister-in-law. She had to admit that Chu Qingyan's way of handling matters was something that even she, who had always been praised for being a reasonable person, could not do as well as Chu Qingyan. At the same time that she admired her, she also developed a deep dislike for Chu Qingyan. Her sister's thoughts were more transparent, so she knew that her sister was jealous of Chu Qingyan's beauty. As for herself, she wasn't just jealous of Chu Qingyan's appearance, but more because of her temperament and style of doing things. If Chu Qingyan appeared in the capital one day, she would definitely set off a storm in front of the rich and noble families. She absolutely couldn't allow this to happen. Liang Danjing slowly twirled the handkerchief in her hand, a faint cold light appearing in her eyes. She was determined to make Chu Qingyan disappear from Jiangnan. Sometimes, a woman wanted to kill another woman. It wasn't necessarily because of a man. It could also be because of pure jealousy or a sense of crisis. Liang Danbing didn't notice her sister's strange behavior and continued, Sister, I found that eldest cousin is really cold. When I talk to him, I feel like I'm standing in an ice cellar when he looks at me. After saying this, she even pretended to shake her shoulders to show that she was really cold. Liang Danjing smiled indifferently, it doesn't matter. What we want is that position, and what? Liang Danbing had always followed her sister's lead, so she immediately asked. Liang Danjing raised the corner of her mouth, and as long as we can replace Chu Qingyan's position, everything that eldest cousin did to her today, we will definitely be able to get in the future. Liang Danbing nodded and smiled contentedly, that's right. We still have a few strong backers. What's there to be afraid of? But some people didn't know, in fact, there was no such thing as being cold and aloof in the world. It was just that the other party wasn't you. There was no such thing as replacing or not replacing. Chapter 791. She slept until dawn. By the time Chu Qingyan opened her eyes, there was already some light outside. She really wanted to cover herself with the blanket and go back to sleep, but she resisted the urge to sleep. She ran her fingers through her hair and got out of bed in one go. She didn't sleep too much. She had something important to do early in the morning. After she finished washing up, Xining opened the door and came in, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Good morning, master." "Well, I'll prepare breakfast first." Before Chu Qingyan finished speaking, there was a sound outside. "Ninth Miss Chu, are you up?" It was Mammy Li's voice. Chu Qingyan twitched her mouth slightly. It seemed that she couldn't have breakfast. "Xining, go to sleep for a while." After that, Chu Qingyan went out. Xining hurriedly followed him out. How could she still have the mood to sleep at this moment? As soon as she went out, she saw Mammy Li waiting at the door. Chu Qingyan smiled politely. "Good morning, Mammy Li, miss, are you kidding? The sun is coming up. It's still early." Mammy Li said with a smile, hiding a knife. Chu Qingyan didn't care. It was early in the morning. She didn't want to make trouble for herself. "Why don't I see the other two mamas? I'll teach you the basic etiquette this morning. Come with me." Mammy Li raised her chin and walked forward. "You don't watch the road. Be careful not to fall to death," Xining whispered. Chu Qingyan smiled and gave her a warning look before catching up with her. As soon as they walked, they came to the side yard, which was the place arranged for the Liang sisters and the three mamas to live. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows. Was she going to enter the wolf's den? She remained calm on the surface, followed Mammy Li to the courtyard, and then stopped. Mammy Li turned to look at her and looked up and down at Chu Qingyan. Her eyes were full of disdain. "I just observed your standing and walking posture. It's not satisfactory. So today, I'll start with your standing posture." Chu Qingyan expressed no objection. She had practiced martial arts for so many years, and her stance was the straightest among all the women. But if the other party wanted to find fault, it would be reasonable no matter what they said. Nanny Li said to the maidservant beside her, "Bai He, go get a vase for ninth young Miss Chu." Chu Qingyan glanced at the maidservant. Strictly speaking, she should be a palace maid. Behind her, there were several palace maids who were bowing. They were all brought over from the palace by the nannies. In addition, the Liang sisters each had 3 maidservants accompanying them. It could be said that they had brought a large group of people with them to the south this time. Other than these, there were also the guards sent by Empress Liang. She bowed her head and smiled. In order to make trouble for her, Empress Liang had made a lot of efforts. When the vase was brought over, Nanny Li looked at it and felt that it was not enough. Thus, she said to Chu Qingyan, "I think that young mistress is tall and strong. A mere vase will not be of much use. Bai He, go add some water." Tall and strong? Xining was stunned. What kind of nonsense was this nanny talking about? "My master is as petite as a flower when standing beside you. You are the one who is tall and strong. Your whole family is tall and strong." But because of her identity, Xining held her breath and did not dare to say anything. When the full vase was placed on top of her head, Chu Qingyan felt that it was a little heavy. She furrowed her brows subtly. A rattan appeared in Mammy Li's hand. She swung her hand and hit the back of her hand. "Okay, put your hand down. If you still need to hold it, what's the use of being a teacher?" Chu Qingyan found the center of gravity and was about to let go, but Mammy Li suddenly made a move. With her skills, it was not difficult for her to dodge, but she took it. There was a red mark on her white skin. In this cold morning, it was painful and numb. Please forgive me, Mississippi. We learned the rules in the palace. But we learned faster after suffering some physical pain. Mammy Lee said with a fake smile. Chu Qingyan twitched the corner of her mouth as a response. Xining saw this scene and almost rushed out. Why did the old witch treat her master like this? Chu Qingyan was not surprised to see Xining's angry look. She sighed faintly. She had already told her not to follow, but she was still so persistent. Fortunately, this girl was not impulsive. But she was also worried that something would happen. Chu Qingyan signaled her to leave with her eyes. Xining knew what her master was thinking. She shook her head and promised not to make a sound and not to disturb her master. Then she had a chance to stay aside. During this time, Mammy Lee did not stop her rattan. Miss, you have to straighten your back. You are hunchbacked. You don't look like a lady from a respectable family. Your legs should be straight and slightly bent. What do you look like? The bottle can't fall. I heard that this bottle is expensive. It's not good if it falls. Obviously, her back was straighter than a pine tree, and her legs were not bent. But the rattan still fell down. Every time, it hit the most vulnerable part of the human body. Chu Qingyan endured it one by one. If it were other people, they would have fainted. Xining felt more and more distressed, and tears welled up in her eyes. When Nanny Li saw that Chu Qingyan's face was gradually turning pale, and Xining's face was filled with anger but did not dare to speak up, she became even more arrogant. Chu Qingyan was annoyed by her endless behavior. When she saw that the rattan was about to hit her arm again, she could not help saying coldly, Mammy, it's the first class. You'd better be merciful. Otherwise, when I see His Highness today and he asks me where I got the injury, I really can't explain it. Her tone was colder than the morning wind and aggressive. Mammy Lee was stunned at once. In addition, Chu Qingyan's words were reasonable. Mammy Lee looked at the red marks on the back of her hand. She originally chose the invisible places to hit, but she didn't expect that she was so excited that she missed a lot of places. Thinking of His Highness in different eyes, Mammy Lee was so scared that she broke out in a cold sweat. She immediately put down the rattan, but she felt that she was at a disadvantage. Mammy Lee said eagerly, it's true that a strict teacher produces a fine student. Miss, you have been standing for 2 hours, and you can keep this posture. For the sake of your progress, I'll put down the rattan first. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows and smiled faintly. Her smile was as cold as frost. If you weren't Empress Liang's servant, your head would have been separated from your body when the first whip fell. Because you have to look at the owner before beating a dog. Although the rattan was not very lethal, she was a girl with delicate skin and tender flesh. Every time she was hit, it hurt. If she was injured during training, it didn't matter. But she was taught a lesson for no reason. She felt aggrieved. She was not a block of wood. She would be tired after standing for a long time, let alone with such a heavy water bottle on her head. She faintly felt a little dizzy. At this time, several footsteps came from afar. Did they come again? Chapter 792. Chu Qingyan was right. The other 2 mamas came late. They walked over, twisting their waists and touching their hair from time to time. It seemed that they had just woken up. It turned out to be a double standard. Ha! Chu Qingyan stared at the door lock not far away. At this time, she could only do that, because if she didn't find a point of strength at this time, she was afraid that she would be out of strength. The 2 grannies walked over. After exchanging glances with Granny Li, Granny Hong sized up Chu Qingyan before saying, this standing posture is about right. Let's go for a walk. Chu Qingyan didn't understand. Mammy Zheng added, continue to walk with the vase. By the way, you can practice your head and neck. After that, the 3 of them laughed complacently. Mammy Li twisted her neck and said to the other 2, watch her and teach her well. Don't let her have any problems. It doesn't matter if we lose face, but if the Empress is disgraced, then, it was obvious that she was talking to Chu Qingyan. Mammy Hong and Mammy Zheng nodded. You've been working hard all morning. Go to rest and leave the rest to us. At this time, Mammy Li left slowly. Miss, be serious. Mammy Zheng said impolitely. Chu Qingyan bit the tip of her tongue to stimulate herself to wake up. Otherwise, she would have almost blacked out. She didn't eat breakfast and had been tormented for more than 2 hours. Even an iron body couldn't stand it. She was annoyed, but it was the first day, so she couldn't argue with them openly. She had to take one step at a time. No, you look so soft. You don't look like someone who is going to kneel down. You look more like someone who is going to cry at a funeral. Mammy Hong took the rattan and threw it on the ground as a warning. Chu Qingyan raised the corner of her mouth and turned to look at the two. She said with a faint smile, cry at a funeral. Mammy, what do you mean? Although Qingyan is wrong, it seems inappropriate for you to describe it like this. If someone with bad intentions heard it, the consequences, his voice lingered at the end, but he didn't continue. However, everyone present understood what he was going to say next. Mammy Hong immediately spat a few mouthfuls of water on the ground and muttered, Bah, look at my mouth. Nonsense. I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that. Chu Qingyan gave a cold snort in her heart. She took the opportunity to take a breath and then continued to walk. It was easy to stand and hold the water. But when she walked to walk, not only to prevent the vase to fall, but also to control of the water inside, but also to control of the water in it. It was a test of her physical strength at this moment. After the small disturbance just now passed, the more Nanny Hong thought about it, the more she felt embarrassed. She was taught a lesson by this little girl. She was furious and said, Miss, your legs need to be nimble. Don't be like an old woman in her 70s or 80s. As he spoke, the rattan fell. Nanny Hong was tall and strong, and she was even more powerful than Nanny Li. Chu Qingyan was hit squarely, and her entire body was unsteady. She could not even protect the water bottle on her head. Bang! The vase fell to the ground and broke. It happened to fall at the feet of the two mamas. The water splashed everywhere. The two mamas couldn't avoid it and were half drenched. Shi Ning clapped her hands and praised them in her heart, but she nimbly stood in front of her master to protect her. If these two people became angry out of humiliation and wanted to take revenge, she would fight them to the death even if she had to risk her life. Shi Ning was right. When Mammy Hong and Mammy Zheng came to their senses, they were so angry that they wanted to tear Chu Qingyan apart. Chu Qingyan recovered a little strength. She saw them spread out their hands to protect her behind like a hen protecting a chick. She was moved and amused. It turned out that the little girl had been with Jean Xin for a long time and had learned to curb violence with violence. But at this time, it was better not to make enemies for her. Otherwise, she would be targeted by these mamas, and the little girl would suffer. So Chu Qingyan raised her hand and patted the little girl on the shoulder. She smiled at her and said, It's okay. I'll do it. Shi Ning carefully observed her face and reluctantly retreated behind her. She really wanted to go up and slap them on behalf of her master. Nanny Hong said angrily, Miss, the old servants have taught you conscientiously, but you are venting your anger on the old servants. It doesn't matter. The old servants are the servants, and you are the master. The old servants dare not say anything. But don't you feel sorry for the broken vase? Yes. Although His Highness is the eldest son of the Emperor and has a strong family background, he can't squander like you. No matter how much wealth he has, he will be squandered by you. Mammy Zheng immediately said. They echoed each other, as if Chu Qingyan really did something wrong. After the two of them finished speaking, Chu Qingyan raised her head to look at them. Her gaze scanned the two of them as she said in a neutral tone, Since you know that the vase is expensive, yet you are using it as an instructor. Qingyan, I wonder if the two of you trust a beginner like me too much, or do you treat something that does not belong to you this way? They just wanted to make a fuss. After all, they couldn't say anything if the vase was smashed. But they didn't expect that they would be checkmated by her. Chu Qingyan's lips curled into a smile. Furthermore, the two of you seem to have gotten something wrong. They frowned and looked at her. This vase was given to Qingyan by a friend. Even if it was smashed, His Highness won't say anything. Mammy Hong and Mammy Zheng looked at each other and didn't know what to say. Chu Qingyan could clearly see the sinister look in their eyes. She said calmly, "There is one more thing. Since Nanny Hong had said that servants are servants, and masters are masters, it is impossible to overstep their boundaries. Therefore, I hope that the few of you will be aware of your status. Qingyan naturally respects the few of you, but there is no guarantee that when you return to the capital in the future, if you meet a narrow-minded noble lord, you will not have a good ending." This slap was really painful. They were angry but didn't dare to say anything. They could only accept it. Chu Qingyan didn't plan on falling out with them, so her tone was still gentle. But the meaning behind her words made it clear that she wasn't a soft persimmon. If they wanted to bully her, they had to know their limits. Otherwise, if they splashed on her, they couldn't blame her. At this time, Hualing walked in from outside. He swept a glance and saw the situation in the yard. He walked in front of Chu Qingyan with a smile and respectfully said, "Little Princess Fei, Master woke up early in the morning and couldn't find you. So you were here." Chu Qingyan turned around and looked at the two. Mammy Hong and Mammy Zheng were missing a way out. Now was the perfect time, since His Highness is looking for you, don't delay. But don't forget about the afternoon training. Chu Qingyan smiled and agreed. Then she turned and left. But when she left, Chu Qingyan's eyes inadvertently fell on the window by the corridor. A light flashed in her eyes and then disappeared. Chapter 793. When she walked out of the courtyard, Chu Qingyan lost all her strength and her legs almost turned to jelly. It was a good thing that Xining had been paying close attention to her the entire time. She quickly supported her and prevented her from touching the ground. Hualing on the side was frightened by her appearance and quickly said, "Little princess, are you all right? Do you want me to call Ethereal to check you? Did the old women inside bully you? Don't worry, this subordinate will report this to master." Hualing's flustered appearance made Chu Qingyan feel funny. It was a pity that she did not have the strength to laugh at this time and could only comfort him, "It's fine, I just didn't eat this morning and am a bit tired. It's nothing serious, don't worry. You don't need to tell His Highness, understand?" How could Hualing be at ease? When had he ever seen the energetic little princess become so weak? But under the little princess' insistence, he reluctantly agreed not to report to master. Chu Qingyan finally let out a sigh of relief, "Go back and tell His Highness first. I'll be there later." Hualing nodded and left. "Xining, help me back." She had lost most of her strength and being able to hold on at this time was already her limit. Xining quickly nodded. After walking for a long time, the master and servant finally finished walking. Her entire body was covered in cold sweat. Although those vines could not compare to whips, they were still real. When she took off her clothes, Xining saw the red marks on her back. She covered her mouth and almost cried out. "They're all small injuries, don't cry. Like this, I won't feel at ease letting you apply medicine for me." Chu Qingyan knew that this little lass was truly frightened and could only tease her with a smile. At this time, how could Xining care about these things? She instantly said fiercely, "Lie down and don't talk." Chu Qingyan choked. This little lass actually yelled at her. She even provoked this little lass's tigress nature. It seemed like this little lass was really angry this time. It was a pity that she did not dare to reply. It was already enough that master had done this much. She obediently laid down and let Xining help wipe her. Although it hurt, she still gritted her teeth and endured. Xining was fierce, but she did not dare to use too much strength. She tried her best to be gentle, afraid of hurting her master. But no matter how careful she was, her master's back was still tense. Just how ruthless was he? Xining sniffled and her heart ached to death. After wiping her body and applying medicine, Chu Qingyan felt like she had died once. In the past, she had never felt this bad even when she was seriously injured or sick. Just like the saying, the king of hell is easy to see, but the little ghosts are hard to deal with. He had already passed the big wave, yet he was defeated by these small skirmishes. She shook her head, got dressed, and got up. Master, 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 Shining master, Shining, master, master, Shining, Mississippi. Chu Qingyan waved her hand. I have to go to His Highness courtyard. Shining master thought for a moment and nodded. She said angrily, yes, let's go and reason with His Highness. These old nannies are too much. Chu Qingyan smiled. I'm not going to complain. She got off the bed and put on her shoes. Shining master pouted and said unhappily, how can we let them off so easily? Master, you can't just break your teeth and swallow it. Chu Qingyan stood up and patted her shoulder. She said with a smile, but we can't bite back after being bitten by a dog. Wouldn't that be too embarrassing? Shining master felt that it was reasonable, but she still could not calm down. Her little face was still wrinkled. Chu Qingyan smiled and shook her head. She could only let her stay in the courtyard to tidy up and not follow her. Otherwise, with the big ice cube's sharp senses, he would definitely sense her emotions. When Chu Qingyan left the side courtyard, the window at the side of the corridor was quietly closed. Unfortunately, it had already fallen into the eyes of others. This room was where Liang Danjing lived, and the one who closed the window was Liang Danbing. Elder sister, Chu Qingyan was so badly tortured by the old nannies just now. It's so satisfying. If it weren't for the fear of being overheard, Liang Danjing would have clapped her hands and cheered. Earlier, Liang Danjing had also stood in front of the window for a while and witnessed the scene of Chu Qingyan being taught a lesson by the old nannies. Although she felt satisfied, she faintly felt uneasy. Elder sister, what are you thinking about? Seeing that her elder sister did not respond, Liang Danbing turned to look at her strangely. She found that her sister was in a daze and couldn't help but feel puzzled. Liang Danjing frowned slightly and looked at her younger sister seriously. Don't you think that Chu Qingyan is not as simple as she looks? Why do you ask that? In her opinion, Chu Qingyan was about the same age as them. How complicated could she be? Liang Danbing somewhat disagreed. Liang Danjing somewhat disagreed with her younger sister's love rival. She recalled Chu Qingyan's every move and word just now, and this feeling became stronger. She is very calm, not like the calmness her age should have, and she is very tolerant. Think about it, if the Ratten fell on you, would you endure it for so long? Liang Danbing was slightly stunned. Her elder sister's words seemed to be reasonable. Elder sister, what do you mean? Liang Danjing continued, did you find that under the difficulties of the old nannies, she responded very calmly? Otherwise, she would not speak. Once she spoke, she would make people speechless. Just now, Nanny Li and Nanny Hong were almost fooled by her words. Liang Danbing carefully thought about it. It was indeed so. She couldn't help but become more serious. I think that it's not that Chu Qingyan is unable to deal with Nanny Hong and the others, but that she disdains to make a move. Liang Danjing pondered for a moment before slowly speaking. This understanding made her feel very uncomfortable. Ever since she was a child, regardless of whether it was in the eyes of the Liang family or outsiders, she had always been well-educated and reasonable, considerate, and intelligent. This was something she had always been proud of. She had never thought that outside of the capital, there would be an opponent who was more outstanding than her in terms of appearance, personality, and ability. She felt that it was unfair that she had been born in the first place. Although she felt that her elder sister's words were somewhat reasonable, Liang Danbing felt that it was unfair to have such a high evaluation. Elder sister, aren't you thinking too much? How could such an outstanding person be raised in such a desolate place like Lian City? Don't scare yourself. Liang Danjing chuckled and said, younger sister, do you know why she endured the old nanny's obvious difficulties? Why? Because she was afraid of the Empress behind Nanny Lee and the others. If she fell out with them, it would be the same as falling out with Aunt. This result is not something she can bear. Liang Danbing suddenly understood. Then, she laughed eerily. So that's how it is. Then, she can only suffer in silence in the future. That's right. Liang Danjing was silent for a moment. Then she revealed a strange light. Or, we can make good use of this situation. Elder sister, what do you mean? Liang Danbing's eyes lit up and she immediately asked. Let's use Nanny Hong and the others to get rid of her. If we can't, it's not bad to make her unhappy. If she resists, she will offend Aunt. In this case, Liang Danjing didn't finish her words, but both of them understood the meaning. Chapter 794. When she arrived at the Big Ice Cube's courtyard, it had already been an hour since Hu Ling came to call her. So when Chu Qingyan walked in, she was a bit nervous, so she raised her head and revealed a bright smile. Big Ice Cube, have you eaten breakfast yet? She asked with a smile. Xiao Su was sitting at the table waiting for her. He looked outside when he heard this. You're asking about breakfast at this time. Could it be that you haven't eaten yet? The sun was already high up in the sky and it was already noon. Chu Qingyan felt a bit of regret. She quickly walked forward to sit down and said with a flattering smile, Isn't it because I've been busy all morning that I'm hungry? The dishes that the kitchen made today look very delicious. Don't let it get cold, let's eat quickly. Xiao Su looked at her and did not say anything. Just now in the room, she only had a bit of porridge. She was so hungry that her chest was sticking to her back, but in front of the Big Ice Cube, she still ate slowly. However, compared to before, her movements were much faster. Xiao Su scooped a bowl of soup and placed it by her hand. His gaze fell on her body for a moment before he moved away. How was your etiquette today? He casually asked. Chu Qingyan nodded as she ate. Maybe I'm a bit stupid, so I'm a bit slow. So you were beaten? Xiao Su suddenly asked. Chu Qingyan was stunned. How did the Big Ice Cube know? Could it be that Hu Ling had a slip of the tongue? When she raised her head and saw him looking at the back of her hand holding the bowl, she finally understood. She quickly raised her hand with a smile. In the past, when I was in school, didn't the teacher scold me with a ruler if I did something wrong? It's the same principle. Xiao Su gave an sound and continued eating. Seeing that he did not probe any further, Chu Qingyan finally let out a sigh of relief. She was even more careful when eating, so her sleeves wouldn't slip down and reveal the wound on her wrist. That wouldn't be something that could be covered up with just a few words. However, Chu Qingyan had forgotten that the person in front of her would be extremely nervous whenever she bumped into something. How could he let go of the red mark on the back of his hand so easily? At this time, there was a sound of footsteps outside the door. It was light and fragmented, and it didn't seem like someone who practiced martial arts. Chu Qingyan bit her hoof, but before she could react, Xiao Su had already reached out to the table beside him. The silver mask immediately flew towards him. By the time the people outside entered the room, he had already put on the mask and was sitting there as if nothing had happened. Liang Danbing walked in with her servants and nodded to Chu Qingyan before walking towards Xiao Su with a charming smile on her face. Eldest cousin, this is the tonic soup that Danbing made for you. It tastes delicious. Drink it while it's hot. As she spoke, she gestured for the servants to bring the soup to the table. Chu Qingyan had already put down her chopsticks. She took a handkerchief from the side and wiped the corners of her mouth. Then, she raised her eyebrows and looked at the scene. This was openly trying to steal her man. Liang Danbing had already asked around. This Chu Qingyan almost didn't cook, so it was impossible for her to prepare food for His Highness. Since this was the case, she would start from this aspect. Men liked women who were clever and considerate. Moreover, if you wanted to capture a man, you had to capture his stomach first. Her craftsmanship had been praised by her brothers and sisters. Moreover, she believed that no matter what, her heart had won over Chu Qingyan. Therefore, at this moment, she lowered her head slightly and revealed a shy and timid expression. Her eyes were filled with a complacent smile. The feeling of stepping on Chu Qingyan was really too delightful. So much so that she had forgotten that Xiao Su had been cold to her during dinner last night. She raised her head in anticipation of Xiao Su's praise. However, what Liang Danbing didn't know was that in the early years, Chu Qingyan often cooked pastries and dishes. However, in Xiao Su's eyes, it was just a waste of time with him. Therefore, he strictly prohibited her from entering the kitchen, which created this misconception for Liang Danbing. Xiao Su didn't even look at the tonic soup. Instead, he frowned and said, "Is there no one in the kitchen? You actually let a guest cook?" Chu Qingyan replied self-reproachfully, "It's my negligence in management." Liang Danbing was stunned. She didn't get the praise she expected, nor did she get the others' unhappy reproach. It was completely different from what she had expected. Moreover, the development of the situation had already gone off the rails. Liang Danbing immediately explained, No, it's not the kitchen's fault. It's little sister, who wanted to make some food for eldest cousin. It's little sister's small token of appreciation. It has nothing to do with anyone else. Although Liang Danbing was proud and arrogant, she still understood that she couldn't offend people the moment she arrived in Jiangnan. However, she didn't expect to hear Xiao Su say, "Pour the soup back where it came from." His tone was exactly like, "Scram back to where you came from." Liang Danbing was instantly stunned. Not only had her intentions been rejected, but her face had also been ruthlessly trampled on. She didn't know how to react at all. It was all her fault for being too impulsive. When she heard that Chu Qingyan always ate with eldest cousin, and that other than the dinner they ate with him last night, they ate in their own courtyard, she felt somewhat indignant. If she had known earlier, she would have listened to her older sister and not acted rashly. She would have waited and observed the situation first. Chu Qingyan didn't say anything at the side. At this time, she saw that Liang Danbing's face was pale and bloodless. Although she felt that Liang Danbing was reaping what she had sown, she was still a young girl after all. Thus, she helped her out by saying, "Many thanks for younger cousin Bing's intentions. It's just that our family's highness doesn't like to eat these things. We've troubled you." The corners of Liang Danbing's mouth twitched. Her expression didn't change as she transferred all of her anger onto Chu Qingyan. She said coldly, "Younger sister will pay attention in the future and make some things that eldest cousin likes." Finishing, Liang Danbing curtsied to Xiao Su and said with a gentle smile, "Since eldest cousin doesn't like these things, then Bing Yada will withdraw. In the future, if eldest cousin wants to eat something, just have someone tell Bing Yadu. Then I won't disturb you anymore. Bing Yadu will withdraw first." She spoke so hurriedly because she was afraid that Xiao Su wouldn't give her face. Liang Danbing turned and glared hatefully at Chu Qingyan before leaving. Chu Qingyan rubbed her nose. This change of attitude was really fast. Also, did she misunderstand? Big Ice Cube didn't like to eat her food. He said it as if other people wanted to eat it. Why are you looking at those unimportant people? Hurry up and eat. Don't cry when it gets cold and your stomach hurts. Xiao Su raised his hand to knock her head as he said helplessly. Chu Qingyan didn't immediately eat when she heard this. Instead, she stared at him without blinking. This made Xiao Su a bit puzzled. Can looking at me fill your stomach? Chu Qingyan pursed her lips into a smile. Big Ice Cube, I find that you seem to be a man of few words to others, but you're a chatterbox to me. Chatterbox? This word made Xiao Su's mouth twitch. This little fellow really dared to say anything. So I helped you vent your anger just now. Are you satisfied? He didn't forget the displeasure that flashed through Liang Danbing's eyes when she came in. Chu Qingyan was stunned. So Big Ice Cube thought that she didn't like Liang Danbing, but he didn't know why she didn't like her. She suddenly felt that getting angry at a blockhead was asking for trouble. Chapter 795. After eating, Chu Qingyan wanted to go back and lie down for a while, but it was a pity that some people didn't want her to be comfortable. As soon as she came out of the large ice cube's courtyard, the palace maid waiting outside came up to greet her. She passed on a message that it was time for the training and she had to immediately go over. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes. If they were in such a rush, why didn't they go into the large ice cube's courtyard to drag her out? They must be bullying the weak and fearing the strong. As soon as Chu Qingyan left, Xiao Su called Hualing in. Say it. What happened in the side yard this morning? Xiao Su directly asked. Don't think that just because he didn't say anything in front of the little fellow, he didn't notice anything. Actually, he was very clear in his heart. Her abnormal behavior today was enough to show that she was hiding something from him. Hualing didn't think that his master would bypass the little princess to ask him. In front of his master, he would always tell him everything he knew. However, he really wasn't clear on this matter. He only knew that when the little princess came out of the courtyard, she didn't have enough strength and her face didn't look good. He reported the truth. How could that be? Xiao Su deeply knitted his brows when he heard this. Hualing thought of the little princess's instructions and thought that the little princess would say this because she didn't want to ruin the relationship between his master and the empress. Maybe the training was too tiring. You also know that the palace rules are cumbersome and the little princess' personality is quite lively, so she might feel restrained for a while. Xiao Su was silent for a while. The red marks on the back of that white hand flashed in front of his eyes. Although he was a bit worried, he knew the little fellow's personality and suppressed his thoughts. Since this was what the little fellow wanted, then let her do it. Hualing saw that his master didn't say anything else and stood on the side with his hands down. He knew that his master was worried about the little princess, but he also knew that his master was more willing to let go and let the little princess deal with it herself. This was indulgence. It was also his master's unique way of pampering. It wasn't that his master didn't care, but he was more willing to respect the little princess' thoughts. If the little princess cried out in pain, then the people in the side yard would have been thrown out. Hualing smiled. He knew that his master could do it. By the time Chu Qingyan reached the side hall, the three great Buddhas were already in position, waiting for her arrival. She couldn't help but find it funny. She didn't plan to complain or run away. These people really took her too seriously. Ninth young lady Chu left so quickly this time, Nanny Hong said in a strange tone. Chu Qingyan smiled. Sorry to have kept you waiting. It's Qingyan's fault. Seeing that she was so decent that no one could find fault with her, they let her go. Because Hualing came to look for her this morning, Nanny Hong and the others had a small meeting in private. They felt that although they wanted to torture Chu Qingyan, they couldn't be too harsh all of a sudden. Because the two cousins hadn't established themselves at His Highness' side yet, Chu Qingyan still had some weight in front of His Highness. So in order to avoid His Highness investigating, they had to slowly torture her. When the time came, even if Chu Qingyan went to complain, they were here on the Empress's decree. If His Highness wanted to investigate, he wouldn't be able to find any fault. In view of the fact that she had been taught a lesson this morning, the lessons in the afternoon were relatively easier. However, Chu Qingyan still didn't have much of an advantage. For example, the position of serving tea. That was repeated over and over again. For example, smiling without showing teeth. Smiling until Chu Qingyan's face almost froze. However, Chu Qingyan's good temper, or perhaps compared to her sharpness in the morning, her gentleness in the afternoon satisfied the nanny's hearts. They tortured her for an hour less than before letting her go back. The moment Chu Qingyan returned to her room, she fell straight onto the bed. Xining was so scared that she quickly came over to check her breathing. Then, she vigorously patted her chest and muttered, "Luckily, I'm still breathing." Chu Qingyan really wanted to roll her eyes, but it was a pity that she didn't even have the strength to do so. At this time, Jean Xan knocked on the door and walked in. "What is it?" Chu Qingyan half propped herself up and looked at him weakly. Jean Xan replied, "Master, Miss Sima is looking for you." "Oh." It was only then that Chu Qingyan remembered that she had been busy with the Liang family's people these past 2 days and hadn't gone to look for her. Thus, she perked up and patted her clothes. Then, she led Jin Xian and Xining to the courtyard where Sima Jun was staying. Sima Jun was playing chess with himself. When he saw that someone had come, he put down the chess piece and propped his chin on his hand, staring unblinkingly at Chu Qingyan. "What's the matter? Is there something on my face?" Chu Qingyan subconsciously touched her face. Sima Jun's eyes lit up as he said, "Speaking of which, Qingyan, you're so charming in men's clothing and so alluring in women's clothing. Even as a woman, I can't help but fall at your feet." It was Chu Qingyan's first time hearing such direct praise. However, compared to the person who spoke, she was the one who was truly stunned by her looks. "With a great beauty like you around, how am I alluring?" Chu Qingyan shook her head and sneered. Sima Jun smiled, "I'm serious. Why don't you abandon that King of England and follow me? When I return to Lawn Manor, I'll take you to ride on the streets and enjoy a vigorous life. How about it?" Chu Qingyan blinked, seriously trying to figure out how much truth there was in her words. To be honest, to be able to run Lawn Manor, an underground organization that used transactions as a gimmick, but in reality, held unfathomable power, she couldn't be that simple. Chu Qingyan was a little worried that if she stayed with her for too long, she wouldn't even know if she would be sold out by her one day. At the side, Tanning pursed her lips and smiled, "Miss Chu, don't take it seriously. My master is just crazy in front of people." After saying that, Tanning received a big roll of her eyes from her master. Chu Qingyan watched the two interact and suddenly smiled. At this moment, they could be trusted. "Why did you call me over?" Chu Qingyan asked directly. Sima Jun raised her chin and pointed at the chessboard. Chu Qingyan didn't understand. Sima Jun then explained, "I'm not bored, so I called you over to relieve my boredom. Come, pick a color and let's play chess." Chu Qingyan pursed her lips. She gave up her rest time and specially came over just to relieve her boredom. But since she was already here, she could only pick a color. But what was going on? Sima Jun said, Wait, I'm not going to make this move." Chu Qingyan, Sima Jun said, "Wait, I haven't thought about it yet." "Go back, Chu Qingyan." Chu Qingyan watched as Sima Jun took back her moves again and again. She silently took back her evaluation of Sima Jun's celestial aura. Indeed, one couldn't judge a book by its cover. This person in front of her was here to cheat her. Tanning, who was watching from the side, couldn't help but smile at Chu Qingyan. "Our master is good at everything, but she's terrible at chess. Everyone who has played chess with her won't agree to it a second time. Until now, only Ji Zhu can tolerate her." Chu Qingyan heard that there was gossip and didn't mind giving way to Sima Jun 3 moves. She asked curiously, "Who is Ji Zhu?" Tanning was about to speak when Sima Jun pushed the chessboard aside and said, "I'm not playing anymore. It's boring. Qingyan, if you're tired, go back and rest. Don't waste your time with me." With that, Sima Jun got up and walked inside. Chu Qingyan saw her obviously stiff footsteps and couldn't help but shake her head in amusement. Perhaps everyone had a secret that they couldn't talk about or someone they couldn't touch. She didn't like to pry into other people's privacy, so she bid farewell to Tanning. Tanning saw her out with an apologetic expression. After leaving the room, Chu Qingyan suddenly remembered something. Yen Luo and the others should have arrived today. Why was there no sign of them? Could it be that something bad had happened? She had a bad feeling about this. Chapter 796. Chu Qingyan's hunch was right. Chen Yenluo and the others were indeed in trouble. Their cargo ship had been detained as soon as it arrived at the dock. However, the news was suppressed by Hua Xiu. She felt that Chu Qingyan had just arrived in Jiangnan not long ago and did not know any high-ranking officials. Even if she knew, she would only be anxious and clueless. It would be useless. It was better to let her solve it. However, Hua Xiuli also had a headache because she didn't stay to wait for Lin Fengyi last time. Therefore, she couldn't find him for the past 2 days. This person was really too petty. Hua Xiuli complained as she went to his residence to wait for him. She was afraid that she would miss him. However, this wasn't entirely Lin Fengyi's fault. He originally wanted to leave her alone for 2 days, but he was really too busy these days. He didn't even have time to return home and basically stayed in the yamen. On this day, he heard that Hua Xiuli had been waiting at his residence for 2 days. He rubbed his brows and ordered his subordinates to return home. When his subordinates who worked day and night heard this, they felt that it was good news. They quickly tidied up and went back happily. Recently, business matters, family matters, and the detention of the ship had all fallen on Hua Xiuli's shoulders. She was really too sleepy and couldn't help but lean against the door and take a nap. When Lin Fengyi returned with his men, he saw a handsome young man leaning against the vermilion door and sleeping lightly with his eyes closed. The warm breeze and bright spring sunshine were not as good as the peaceful time at this moment. The worries of the past few days disappeared in an instant when he saw that peaceful side profile. His mind was clear and bright. The guards standing on both sides of the door saw their master looking deeply at Hua Xiuli. They thought that he was dissatisfied with her blocking the way and hurriedly said, "Master Hua, young Master Hua has been looking for you several times." He deliberately raised his voice and immediately woke Hua Xiuli up. She rubbed her eyes and in a daze, saw the person standing at the bottom of the stairs. She fixed her eyes on him and immediately ran over. When the guards saw that Hua Xiuli had woken up, he heaved a sigh of relief. However, it seemed that his master was a little unhappy, as if he shouldn't be called Hua Xiuli. When Hua Xiuli ran over, Lin Fengyi had already waved his hand to let his subordinates in. He slowly walked up the stairs alone. "Where did you go? Wanting to see you is harder than ascending to the heavens." Hua Xiu scolded as soon as she opened her mouth. Lin Fengyi looked at her with a faint smile. "I have work to do." "What is it that requires you to work day and night?" "Your body is your capital. If you're tired, who will compensate you?" "The imperial court." "You're thinking too much." Hua Xiuli subconsciously blurted out, but after saying that, he felt that he had crossed the line. However, seeing that he didn't seem to mind and was in a good mood, he didn't take it to heart. Lin Fengyi shook his head. "There's nothing we can do about that." Hua Xiuli saw that he didn't want to listen, so she could only give up. She wanted to open the door and ask about the ship, but when she looked at the sky, she couldn't help but swallow her words. She hadn't entered the door yet. If she said something wrong and was thrown away by him, then she wouldn't be able to do anything. Thus, she said, "It's already evening. Have you eaten?" Lin Fengyi stepped through the door. Hearing her words, the corners of his lips curled up subtly. "Why? You're treating. You're thinking too much." "Of course I'm here to freeload." Hua Xiuli followed him through the door. Only then did she reveal her true colors and smile. Lin Fengyi raised his brows. "I'm a miser. I don't have anything to treat you to. I'll eat whatever you eat. I don't believe that your chef will mistreat you." Because she had been leaning against the door for too long, she was a little numb. Hua Xiuli walked slowly. Lin Fengyi noticed that she was walking strangely, so he slowed down to wait for her. He didn't know when it started, but he started to learn to accommodate her. Lin Fengyi was frightened by his own thoughts. He couldn't help but quicken his steps. However, he was pulled back by a small force. He turned his head and saw that pitiful little face. "Wait for me. My legs are numb." Lin Fengyi pursed his lips, but didn't say anything. Thus, Hua Xiuli was like an octopus that almost clung onto him. The two of them walked all the way, causing the servants in the residence to widen their eyes in shock. After entering the courtyard, Lin Fengyi left her alone to change his clothes. She paced around the courtyard alone, thinking about how to say something to make Lin Fengyi release her. Originally, she thought that it was just a matter of one sentence from him. However, the news that she heard in the past 2 days was that the seizure of the cargo ship was not a small matter. It involved many hidden matters. There were many different opinions, so she was afraid that if she said something wrong, she would be caught. That would be bad. When Lin Fengyi walked out refreshed, he saw Hua Xiaoli standing in the garden in a daze. Large blooms of purple scattered behind her. The flowers were more fragrant than the person, but the person was prettier than the flowers. It was a large field of lavender flowers. Lin Fengyi stared at her side profile and couldn't help but soften his stiff facial lines. His entire person was really as warm as the spring breeze. Hua Xiaoli sensed his presence and couldn't help but turn around. At this moment, there was still a lingering look of confusion on her face. You don't visit a temple without a cause. Speak, what's the matter? Lin Fengyi walked past her and walked towards the pavilion among the flowers. He then lifted his clothes and sat down. Hua Xiaoli followed him obediently. When she heard his question, she thought about it and felt that it wasn't the right time. She said, "What's the matter?" "Wait until the food is served. Let me tell you, a few days ago, I had someone send you a bottle of 100-year-old wine. I heard from the housekeeper that you haven't touched it. I already had him bring it over. Why don't we drink a few cups today?" Lin Fengyi's gaze slid past her attentive expression. Coincidentally, the housekeeper had brought the servants over with the dishes. In his hand was the bottle of wine that Hua Xiaoli mentioned. He didn't say anything and narrowed his eyes. This girl had already established a good relationship with the people in his residence. When the housekeeper heard that Hua Xiaoli wanted to drink with his lord, he was very happy. He ordered the servants to prepare several dishes to go with the wine. Hua Xiaoli was cheerful and had a sweet mouth. Everyone in the residence liked her. Moreover, she was the only one who could make his lord so angry and make him have the emotions that his age should have. He couldn't help but be grateful to her. However, when the housekeeper put down the wine bottle, he realized that his lord was looking at him with a somewhat frightening gaze. He immediately slipped away. Hua Xiaoli removed the cork from the bottle and filled their cups with wine. Then, she raised her cup high and said to Lin Fengyi, "Come, let's toast to today's meal." Lin Fengyi was speechless. What a good reason. Hua Xiaoli didn't wait for Lin Fengyi and drank 2 cups herself. The aged wine was a little sweet but not too strong. Moreover, she had been thirsty and hungry for half a day, so she drank too much. After a few cups, she was gorgeously drunk. Lin Fengyi raised his cup and looked at her drifting gaze. He couldn't help but feel a headache. If he had known, he wouldn't have asked the housekeeper to bring the wine. At this moment, Hua Xiaoli started to speak. She propped up her chin and said with misty eyes, "Lin Fengyi, seeing that you're all alone, how about I send you a few beauties? Then, how about you promise me one thing?" Lin Fengyi's gaze instantly became dangerous. Chapter 797. After being an official for so many years, or rather, as he had been promoted, there were many people who wanted to curry favor with him and ask him to do things for them. The usual method was to send gold, silver, and jewels to women. It could be said that this was the first time Hua Xiaoli had been so straightforward. Her eyes were blurred as she propped up her chin. She was innocent and not pretentious as she calmly told him what she was thinking. "Lin Fengyi, seeing that you are all alone, how about I send you a few beauties? Then, how about you promise me a condition?" Lin Fengyi's gaze was locked onto her body. His usually elegant smile slowly revealed a hint of playfulness. If Hua Xiaoli was sober, she would immediately jump 3 feet away. Normally, when Lin Fengyi revealed such an expression, it meant that he was in a bad mood and the person who made him unhappy would be unlucky. Unfortunately, Hua Xiaoli was completely drunk at this time and did not realize that something was wrong. Instead, she looked at him very persistently, waiting for his answer. Lin Fengyi smiled. His smile made one's hair stand on end, but Hua Xiaoli did not notice. "How do you know that I am all alone?" Hua Xiao didn't suspect anything. She switched from one hand to 2 hands to support her heavy head. She answered every question, because in your mansion, other than the housekeeper and the attendants, you don't have a single relative. Also, I heard people say that you lost your parents when you were young and were raised by the servants in your mansion. Lin Fengyi's lips curved into a cold smile. There were some words that Hua Xiuli did not dare to say normally, but now that she was drunk, she continued fearlessly, also, your temper is so bad that the officials under you are all in awe of you. They are respectful but not close. Also, you are so petty, who would be willing to be friends with a miser? Only what? Only I am willing to be friends with a bad person like you. Hua Xiuli muttered to herself. Lin Fengyi had already planned to throw her back, but when he heard her soft murmur, he could not help but be stunned. I have no parents, no close friends, and no loyal subordinates. Just like you said, my temper is bad and I am not generous. Why are you still willing to be friends with me? Lin Fengyi looked at the drunk and naive girl and could not help but smile slightly. Hua Xiuli blinked a little awkwardly. I don't know. Perhaps her naive appearance pleased Lin Fengyi. He let go of the cup in his hand and wanted to raise his hand to call someone to take this drunk person away. Although Drunken Flower Sleeves was drunk, she was still very quick-witted at the crucial moment. When she saw Lin Fengyi's movements, she immediately stood up and threw herself at Lin Fengyi. She originally wanted to press down on his hand, but unfortunately, she used too much strength and her whole body fell on him. Lin Fengyi was afraid that she would fall, so he reached out to catch her and hugged her tightly. And to him, Hua Xiuli, but Hua Xiuli. However, Hua Xiu was clinging to him tightly, and the servants were standing far away from the pavilion. No one saw this scene, but Lin Fengyi could not call for people in this situation. Even if he did not care about his own face, he had to care about Hua Xiu's reputation. He had no choice but to coax her. Get up first. Let's talk slowly. Because she was used to negotiating with others, she was still shrewd even when she was drunk. She refused to give up and said, No, I won't fall for your trick. Lin Fengyi was helpless. At this moment, Hua Xiu raised her head to look at him and suddenly reached out to hold his face. Lin Fengyi was shocked by her sudden action. When he reacted and was about to pry her hand away, he heard her say, I'm sorry. Why are there two Lin Fengyi's? Stop shaking me. I'm dizzy. Change back. Lin Fengyi was speechless. Hua Xiuli, stop messing around. Get down. He raised his eyebrows and said sternly. Unfortunately, he was entangled by Hua Xiuli like an octopus and had no prestige to speak of. Hua Xiuli did not give up. I'm not messing around. I'll give you a beauty and you promise to let her go. How about that? Lin Fengyi was a normal man. His flowery sleeves twisted around in his arms like a hemp rope, touching places that shouldn't be touched. Instantly, his body tensed up. Something unfamiliar was awakening in his body. His expression instantly turned ugly. Hua Xiuli sensed that something was wrong with him and touched his face with concern. Why is your face so red? Do you have a fever? Let her go first before you get sick. Lin Fengyi's mouth twitched. Then, his gaze fell on her confused face and a dim light lit up in his eyes. Hua Xiuli saw the dim light in his eyes and subconsciously wanted to retreat, but she heard him say, Beauty? Where is she? Hearing his words, Hua Xiuli thought that he was enlightened and was willing to accept her bribe. But for some reason, she felt uncomfortable in her heart. How could he so easily agree to her and accept the person she gave him? Did he often accept bribes like this on a daily basis? Lin Fengyi saw that she was not speaking and her expression was changing. She was glaring at him with fiery eyes and he could not help but frown. What? Going back on your words? Hua Xiuli was angry. Do you really want me to give you a beauty? Aren't you elated? How can you be like this? Aren't you an honest and upright official? Shouldn't you reject someone's gift with righteous words? Lin Fengyi took a deep breath. He felt that he was going to lose half his life tonight because of this annoying girl. She was so fickle. The ancients were right when they said that a woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the sea. Then what do you think we should do? Lin Fengyi really wanted to ignore her and just leave her behind. Hua Xiuli pursed her lips and then quickly wrapped her hands around his neck. She said domineeringly, I don't have a beauty, but there is one in Hua Xiuli. Do you want it? Just now, he wanted her to back off so that he could soak in cold water to get rid of the fire in his body. Now, his fire was even bigger. Lin Fengyi narrowed his eyes and leaned closer to her. His tone was very dangerous as he whispered in her ear, Are you serious? When night fell, Chu Qingyan felt that something was wrong. She sent someone to the Hua family to find Hua Xiuli. However, she did not receive any news. Instead, she received Hua Xiuli's servant, Ah Fu. His master had previously instructed him to tell Chu Qingyan the truth if she asked. Thus, Ah Fu told Chu Qingyan everything about the cargo ship being detained. After listening, Chu Qingyan nodded with a dark expression. It was similar to what she had expected. Then where is your master now? My master went to official Lin's residence to discuss something with him, Ah Fu immediately replied. Chu Qingyan looked at the sky. She felt that something was wrong to go and find Lin Fengyi at this time. My master and official Lin are friends. Young Master Chu, please don't think too much. Ah Fu could tell what Chu Qingyan was thinking and immediately explained. Chu Qingyan nodded and said, Then tell me, why didn't you tell me that something happened to the cargo ship? Ah Fu replied, My master was afraid that you would be worried and wanted to resolve the matter personally before reporting everything to young Master Chu. I see. Chu Qingyan suddenly understood. As expected, she had found a very reliable and trustworthy partner. However, Chu Qingyan was still puzzled. Then how does your master intend to persuade official Lin to let you go? Ah Fu shook his head. This servant doesn't know either. However, my master must have his own way. Young Master Chu, please don't worry. Chu Qingyan could only nod. She probably did not expect that Hua Xiuli's plan was to send her to be eaten. Chapter 798. Are you serious? Lin Fengyi knew that Hua Xiuli was usually daring, but not to this extent. However, he knew that she was already drunk. If she was sober, she would not say such a thing. Thinking that it was rare to see Hua Xiuli like this, Lin Fengyi had the intention to tease her. When Hua Xiuli heard this question, she immediately patted her chest and snorted, Hey, why don't you investigate? Am I, Hua Xiuli, the kind of person who speaks carelessly? A gentleman's word is as good as a whip. You don't need to doubt my authenticity. A gentleman? Lin Fengyi chuckled and looked her up and down, from her red cheeks to her bright red lips, and then from her jade neck to her undulating curves. Lin Fengyi originally only wanted to tease her, but when his gaze landed on the place where it should not land, he felt the complicated feeling in his body start to surge again. He instantly shifted his gaze away pathetically. At this time, Hua Xiuli's nerves were very careless. She was still twisting in his arms recklessly, so much so that he almost could not suppress the fire in his heart. Lin Fengyi, you don't believe me. Hua Xiuli used all her strength to grab his collar and climb up, trying to get closer to him, wanting to argue with him. The fragrance of the wine mixed with a young girl's natural body fragrance suddenly floated into his nose. Lin Fengyi's blood surged, and he was about to lose his patience. All right, as you wish. He spat out these words from between his teeth. Then, he suddenly stood up with her in his arms and quickly walked towards his courtyard. Hua Xiuli was suddenly picked up by him and almost twisted her neck. She quickly reached out to wrap her arms around his neck and complained, Do you know how to have tender feelings for the fairer sex? Lin Fengyi looked at her in annoyance, but still lifted her up a little so that she could lie more comfortably. Because the master of the household had not rested yet, the servants were still working diligently at their respective posts. When they suddenly saw the usually calm and composed sir carrying someone over, they were so shocked that they did not know how to sweep the floor, water the flowers, or wipe the windows. Their eyes were wide open. What are you all standing there for? After Lin Fengyi walked past, the butler happened to walk over and saw everyone's stunned expressions. He could not help but scold them. One of the servants clearly had not regained his senses. Butler, this servant saw Sir carrying a youth over. Do you think Sir is gay? As soon as he finished speaking, the butler hit the servant's head. What are you talking about? Sir is a male and likes females. That is the young master of the Hua family. Be careful, or I will deduct your monthly salary. The servant hurriedly waved his hands and ran off. The steward looked at the end of the path, stroked his beard, and smiled so widely that his molars couldn't be seen. The Lin family is finally going to have an heir. I have to quickly prepare the betrothal gifts. My lord is still young and doesn't know anything. I have to be prepared. What do you buy? What do you, there? The butler nagged along the way. His footsteps were so vigorous that it was hard to tell that he was already an old man. Lin Fengyi did not know that the butler who had raised him since he was young had already started to arrange his child's future life. He kicked the door open and turned around to bring the person in his arms in. Walking to the bed, Lin Fengyi put her down. When Hua Xiu touched the soft bed, she was like a rabbit touching the grassland. She started to roll all over the bed. Lin Fengyi held his forehead and then grabbed her hand to hold her in place. He then lifted the blanket at the side and wrapped her tightly in it. He then sternly reminded her, "Don't move. Be a good girl and sleep." Hua Xiu looked at him with her big eyes. Her gentle eyes were filled with innocence. "What about you?" Lin Fengyi wanted to hold his forehead again. He had carried her to his room in a moment of dizziness. However, he did not clean the guest room. If he asked the servants to tidy up another room, he would probably torment her for a long time. Thus, Lin Fengyi did not regret putting her here. "I'll sleep in the study. The study must be very hard. You won't be able to sleep comfortably. My place is very soft. Come up. I can share half of it with you." Hua Xiu moved a little closer to him and blinked at him. Lin Fengyi took a deep breath. He felt that it was necessary to teach her a lesson. "Xiu Li, do you know how dangerous it is to say such things to a healthy adult man?" "Dangerous?" Hua Xiu Li did not understand. "Are you saying that you will harm me?" Lin Fengyi felt that he was really too childish tonight. He actually tried to reason with a drunkard. He flicked her forehead heavily and then stood up. "Sleep well. Don't cause any more trouble. Call the servants if you need anything." He did not have the mood to chat with her here. What he needed most now was a bucket of cold water. He had not rested well for the past few days and was extremely tired. He had already reached his limit to spare the energy to eat with this little rabbit. Now, he just wanted to have a good sleep. But just as he turned around, the person on the bed jumped up and hugged him from behind. "You can't leave. If you leave, who will let my cargo ship go?" It had to be said that Hua Xiuli was very professional. Even at this time, she did not forget about her business. "We'll talk about it tomorrow." Lin Fengyi felt a dull pain in his forehead. This fellow was not done yet. No matter how good Lin Fengyi's upbringing was, he was about to collapse because of her. "No, you all say one thing and do another. Who knows, you might disappear tomorrow." Hua Xiuli did not give up. "Want to lie to her?" "No way." The young girl's soft body was tightly pressed against his back. He felt that the scorching temperature was about to burn him. Lin Fengyi broke free from her hands and turned around. His fingertips touched her chin and then he used some strength to lift it up slightly. He narrowed his eyes and his eyes flashed with a dangerous light. "Little rabbit, I'm not Lu Xiaohui. I'm also not Xiao Su. If you want me to stay calm, humph. Then don't provoke me. You won't be able to bear the consequences." He originally wanted to scare her. Seeing that she was obviously stunned, he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. This fellow should be able to calm down now. Unexpectedly, Hua Xiaoli came back to her senses. She raised her hands and wrapped them around his waist. Because she was half kneeling on the bed, it was very convenient for her to do it. Her whole body directly pressed against his. She raised her head slightly and opened her red lips. Her posture was very seductive. Then what if I insist on provoking you? What can you do to me? The heat that he had been suppressing instantly broke through his restrictions and reached his lower abdomen because of her words. This feeling almost made Lin Fengyi lose his balance. Following that, he closed his eyes and lowered his head. He met that pair of ignorant and fearless eyes that were filled with bright light. He tightly locked onto her face. The last word was as light as a breeze, but it contained the depth of a storm. Then as you wish. After saying that, he leaned over and kissed her lips. It was just a natural desire for food and sex. However, falling into oblivion often started from a careless provocation. Chapter 799. After sending Fu off, Chu Qingyan sat in the hall, deep in thought. At this time, Xiao Su walked in. It's so late. Why are you here? Chu Qingyan was slightly surprised to see him standing in front of her. I went to the courtyard to look for you, but I couldn't find you. I asked the servants and found out that you were entertaining guests. Xiao Su took a seat at the side, then asked, what were you thinking about just now? Chu Qingyan sighed softly, then told him the reason. After that, she said, Xiaoli already went to find official Lin, but with official Lin's personality of separating public and private matters, I'm afraid she won't be able to get anything good. Xiao Su quietly listened to her words, his gaze peacefully falling between her brows. He was a little absent-minded. After she finished speaking, she looked at him in confusion, then he smiled slightly. She was so worried that she almost couldn't sleep, but he could still smile. Big Ice Cube, you should say something. It's fine if you don't help me, but you're still smiling. Do you think it's fun to see me worried and anxious? Seeing that she misunderstood, Xiao Su wasn't in a hurry to explain. Instead, he changed the topic and said, how was your practice today? Chu Qingyan glanced at him and said unhappily, so. What? You want to supervise me in learning etiquette too? Xiao Su shook his head and asked in confusion, you've been very angry recently. Who provoked you? Other than you, who else can provoke me? Chu Qingyan retorted indifferently, then leaned on the table to think. Seeing her dispirited look, Xiao Su didn't want to keep her in suspense anymore. Rolling up his sleeves, he said unhurriedly, Fengyi already told me about the ship being detained. These words immediately attracted Chu Qingyan's attention. She turned to look at him, waiting for him to continue. I told you about the Liu family's smuggling. Their cargo ship will arrive at the dock this month, and they will sell it privately. It happens that today and tomorrow are the key days, so all the ships near the dock must be inspected. In order not to alert the enemy, the ship is detained for inspection in the name of finding the murderer. Fengyi also knows about your cargo ship. He asked us to cooperate with him, and the ship will be released by tomorrow noon at the latest, so you don't have to worry. After Big Ice Cube finished speaking, Chu Qingyan let out a sigh of relief. Her tense expression also eased. That's good. I thought it would take a while. As long as we can make it in time for the transaction, it doesn't matter. After saying that, Chu Qingyan immediately stood up and was about to walk out when Xiao Su stopped her. Where are you going? Chu Qingyan smiled mischievously. Of course I'll send someone to inform Xiaolin. Otherwise, she will stupidly run over to Lord Lin to ask for people and ships. Wouldn't it be a wasted trip? Xiao Su raised his hand to brush away the loose hair in front of her forehead, pressing down a few of the raised strands of hair on the top of her head. Then he said slowly, how do you know that she will make a wasted trip? What do you mean? Chu Qingyan didn't understand. Xiao Su put down his hand and turned his back to her. Thinking of how his good friend mentioned Hua Xiaolin from time to time, he couldn't help but smile meaningfully. During this period of time, their friendship has improved by leaps and bounds. Speaking of this, he paused and then said, even if I tell you, you won't understand. Chu Qingyan jumped in front of him and said unhappily, what do you mean by I won't understand? I'm not a child. Yes, 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 you're not a child. In a few days, your birthday will come. At that time, you will really be an adult. Xiao Su's eyes deepened when he spoke of her birthday. If the little guy was of marriageable age, then the marriage could be put on the agenda. Chu Qingyan nodded in satisfaction. She wanted to say something, but she saw that the person in front of her was deep in thought. She couldn't help but raise her hand to poke his chest, but when she raised her hand halfway, there was a knock on the door. Xiao Su lowered his head to look at her and then looked past her to the door. When he saw who it was, he couldn't help but frown. Chu Qingyan took back her hand and turned to see a servant girl standing at the door. She raised her eyebrows. Wasn't this Liang Dongjing's personal servant girl? Your Highness, my master has something to invite you to the yard for a chat. The servant girl bowed and reported. It's already so late. Let's talk tomorrow. Xiao Su's face was cold as he waved his hand to have her leave. Yes, this servant understands. She left after speaking. Just now, without permission, this servant girl stood outside the door and spoke. Whether it was her words or her actions, they were all very appropriate. It reflected the magnanimity of her young miss as a member of a noble family. Now that she was rejected, the servant girl was neither servile nor overbearing. Chu Qingyan slightly narrowed her eyes. This Liang Danjing was not simple to be able to teach such a servant girl. Is it appropriate for you to heartlessly reject a beauty's invitation? Chu Qingyan withdrew her gaze and raised her eyebrows to look at the person beside her. Xiao Su curled his lips. It seems a bit inappropriate. Then I'll go. You dare. Xiao Su looked at the little fellow in front of him who was scowling and couldn't help but reach out to hold her shoulder. He lightly smiled. I'm just teasing you. Teasing me? Chu Qingyan waved his hand away and glared at him. Unable to take it anymore, she raised her foot and fiercely stomped on his foot. Xiao Su didn't dodge and let her do as she pleased. Then, Chu Qingyan swaggered back to her room with her hands behind her back. After she left, Xiao Su looked at the clear footprints on his boots and couldn't help but shake his head with a smile. The moonlight was warm and the night was getting darker. Lin Manor. Both of them were novices when it came to matters of the bed. So when their necks intertwined, Hua Xiuli collapsed in his arms, panting heavily, her eyes shimmering like water. Lin Fengyi's gaze fell on her alluring lips. As he had sucked too hard just now, he had bitten it. He tenderly raised his hand to caress her dark red lips, but unexpectedly, this action made the person in his arms shrink back and lower his head to meet her embarrassed and angry eyes. Bite me? Do you think I'm a steamed bun? Hua Xiuli took advantage of his inattention and pulled him hard. Lin Fengyi was not on guard and was pulled down by her. His entire body lay on the bed. Hua Xiuli flipped over and sat on top of him, intending to return the favor. She lowered her head and fiercely bit his lips. Lin Fengyi twitched in pain. He couldn't follow her, so he hugged her with both hands. Very quickly, their positions changed. Hua Xiuli's world spun and she found that she was the one being pressed down again. Before she could protest, the person on top of her had already leaned close to her. His cool breath sprayed on her face and it was a little itchy. She couldn't help but want to scratch it, but he grabbed her hand. You shouldn't bite like this. He kindly reminded her. Then what should I do? She forgot to move and asked in a daze. Be good. Open your mouth, I'll teach you. He guided her patiently. Hua Xiuli didn't believe him. He had clearly touched her teeth just now. But she didn't know if it was because his voice was too gentle or something else, but she unexpectedly followed his words. She closed her eyes and slightly opened her mouth to accommodate him. This was the first time he had seen such an obedient Hua Xiuli. Lin Fengyi felt that his heart had been ruthlessly hit. It's better to be obedient after drinking wine. he said to himself, and then leaned over her. One hand slowly touched her belt. With a gentle tug, her clothes fell apart. Chapter 800. Inside Liang Danjing's room. Lu Ji, the personal maid who went to find Xiao Su, was standing in front of Liang Danjing. She bowed and said, "Miss, His Highness said it's late and he wants to talk tomorrow." Liang Danjing nodded, "I understand." Lu Ji was puzzled. "Miss, Lu Ji doesn't understand why you want to find His Highness at this time." Liang Danjing smiled, "I know he won't agree, but I just want to test his bottom line. Since he said it's not suitable at night, then we'll do it during the day. I don't believe that he won't give me face. I'm the Liang family's legitimate daughter, and I was personally sent here by my aunt." Lu Ji understands, but this servant feels that. Lu Ji hesitated. "If you have something to say, say it. Don't hesitate." Liang Danjing looked at her trusted maid and said gently. Lu Ji nodded, her eyes flashing with calculation. This servant feels that it won't be easy to conquer His Highness. His Highness's personality is too cold. If we want to get close to him, it will be very difficult. This servant feels that it's better to use some unusual methods. Liang Danjing shook her head and stood up. After taking a few steps, she turned around again and looked at Lu Ji with bright eyes. "I will not resort to those methods until the very end. Whatever Chu Qingyan can do, I can do it as well. Lu Ji, go and prepare for my meeting with His Highness tomorrow." "But His Highness hasn't agreed yet." Lu Ji was worried. In her opinion, His Highness wouldn't easily let her miss get close. "Just do as I say. I'll make my own decisions about the rest." Liang Danjing waved her hand and dismissed her. Lu Ji saw that her miss had a card up her sleeve and retreated with relief. When the room returned to silence, Liang Danjing walked to the zither table. She raised her hand and stroked the zither strings, a faint smile in her eyes. Before coming to Jiangnan, she and her sister were summoned to the palace by her aunt. She didn't forget what her aunt said to them. As long as one of them could give birth to her eldest cousin's child, then the Liang family's position would be more stable and their status would rise. But the premise was that they could tie down her eldest cousin's heart. What's so difficult about trapping someone's heart? When she was in the capital, the Liang family's doorstep was almost trampled by matchmakers. She didn't believe that with her talent, her looks, and her character, she wouldn't be able to capture a man's heart. Chu Qingyan's face appeared in her mind. Her lips were slightly curved, and her eyes were no longer as gentle as before. Instead, there was a hint of coldness. All the men in the world were the same. They liked the new and hated the old. Liang Danjing looked at the guqin as if she was looking at a lover, and then pulled the gauze to cover it. Back in the room, Chu Qingyan was about to ask Xining to prepare a pot of tea when she saw her father sitting in the room, dozing off. Chu Qingyan found it funny. She walked forward and pushed him. "Father, why did you fall asleep here?" Mr. Chu rubbed his eyes and woke up. He looked at his daughter in front of him with sleepy eyes and mumbled, "You don't want your father anymore now that you have an upside-down onion." "Father, what are you saying? When did your daughter say that she didn't want you anymore?" She couldn't help but laugh. "Do you even need to say that? Why aren't you back so late? Didn't you go on a date with an upside-down onion? You made me wait here for you for so long. You're bad." Mr. Chu crossed his arms and raised his chin. He harumphed like an old urchin. Chu Qingyan was amused by his behavior. She quickly hugged his arm and said with a smile, "Father, I went to receive my business partner because he came over. Don't think too much." "Oh right, Father, it's so late. Why are you looking for me?" Mr. Chu nodded in satisfaction, but he pursed his lips and pretended to be troubled. "Father fell asleep and forgot why I was looking for you." Chu Qingyan comforted him. "It's okay. We'll talk about it when Father remembers." Mr. Chu scratched his head. It was annoying that he couldn't remember. He always remembered that it was a very important matter. "Oh right, Kai Kai, where have you been recently?" You've been missing the divine snake. Father, it's the divine dragon that I've been missing. Chu Qingyan corrected him before saying, your son-in-law's mother, who is also my future mother-in-law, sent someone to teach me etiquette. I've been learning for the past 2 days. Mr. Chu's eyes lit up. It's good to learn a little. If it's fun, you can bring father along. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but frown. I don't think it suits you at all. It's more fun with little Hai and the rest. Mr. Chu finally calmed down. He then asked, didn't you say that a few young ladies came to our residence? Where are they? What are they here for? Are they here to play with you? Play with her? Yes, that's right. They were here to play her to death. Chu Qingyan nodded. They're Big Ice Cube's cousins. Father, if you have nothing to do, don't go to the side courtyard. After all, you're not familiar with them. Just let Big Ice Cube entertain them. Are they pretty? Mr. Chu leaned over and asked. Chu Qingyan recalled the 2 young ladies from the Liang family. To be fair, they're both top-notch in terms of looks. Mr. Chu was unhappy. No, I have to keep an eye on them. Cousins, they're cousins. They're not far away, but they're not close either. Although they're not as good-looking as father, they're still outstanding. It won't be good if they're targeted. Father, they're outstanding. Chu Qingyan shook her head with a smile. However, her father was right. Empress Liang had this intention all along. Mr. Chu waved his hand and said, who cares if they're fragile or not? Father doesn't want to have another father-in-law. Wait here. I'll go back and discuss with your mother. Let's get Empress Liang as soon as possible so that no one can covet her. With that, Mr. Chu left in a hurry. After taking a few steps, Mr. Chu suddenly remembered that he had come to ask his daughter about her coming of age and whether it was time for her to marry his son-in-law. Forget it. It'll be here in a few days anyway. Chu Qingyan couldn't stop her father at all. She could only shake her head when she heard his incoherent words. Anyway, her father was forgetful. She believed that he would forget everything after a night's sleep. Regarding the matter in her sleeve, since Big Ice Cube had spoken, she wasn't worried anymore. She still had to deal with the 3 big shots tomorrow. Chu Qingyan twisted her neck and prepared to go to sleep. At this moment, under the warm red silk tent, the 2 of them had taken off their clothes. Their ink-black hair intertwined, and their fragrant sweat stained their skin. Under the soft light, their entire bodies glowed faintly. Knowing that it was her first time, Lin Fengyi tried his best to be gentle. However, no matter how careful he was, the person below still started to cry. Although the arrow was on the bow and had to be released, Lin Fengyi still stopped. He kissed her closely and tried his best to comfort her. She opened her eyes in the sleeve and looked at him against the light. Her black hair fell, and it seemed that she could only see his shiny black eyes. She pursed her lips. Let me ask you a question. Lin Fengyi looked at her and blinked in confusion. Can anyone get into your bed? This question made Lin Fengyi instantly speechless. It seemed that he shouldn't go along with her anymore. She was climbing over his head just because he was a little careless. Do you think that everyone is like you? Without giving her a chance to speak, Lin Fengyi lowered his head and bit her lips. His lower body moved and he swallowed all her moans. Other than you, who else has the ability to make me lose my mind and surrender? The night is still young. I'll take my time with you.